What's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome in. No Bob Cooney today. You get Bill Colarulo and the one and only Amy Fadul. What's going on, Amy?
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, but it could have been happier if the Philadelphia Phillies didn't lose their first back-to-back games since April 24th last night. But we're going to try not to overreact, but I do have some overreactions that I'm going to talk to Amy and Ray about to see whether or not we should do that. But they do lose their first back-to-back game since April 24th, going down 8-4 against the San Francisco Giants. They're still 38-17. But Taijuan Walker struggles again. Pitches 6 innings, gives up 9 hits, 6 runs, 5 of them earned. He now has a 5.51 ERA. In 6 games as a starter, he's pitched 32 2/3 innings. He's given up 40 hits, 20 earned runs, walked 12, only 25 strikeouts. But it wasn't all his fault yesterday. 3 errors in the field by our fighting Phils, 2 of them by Alec Bohm, who I know they were talking about it on the morning show this morning. I do think Alec Bohm has been a lot better in the field this season, but you're going to have games like that. JT extends his hitting streak to 16. That's a positive. Kyle Schwarber, maybe June came a couple days early, hits a bomb yesterday, almost in the McCovey Cove. But with this loss and now losing 3 of their last 4, did it expose any weaknesses on that team? Fielding potentially could be an issue. But for me, the number one weakness that I'm seeing right now is in that starting pitching, because you are getting great pitching from Wheeler and Nola and Ranger Suarez. I know he struggled the other night. But how long are we going to go with the Taijuan Walker experiment? You have a better starter in the bullpen that you could easily move back into that starting rotation, but yet it seems like they're trying to force Taijuan Walker on us, Amy.
Well, yes, his contract says that. I mean, I think if you asked Rob Thompson candidly, he wouldn't hesitate to go with Spencer Turnbull. But you know that it's dictated otherwise. And unfortunately, we talked about it at the time when Walker came back, and everybody's like, "Oh, okay, well, Taijuan Walker's back. What do you do with Spencer Turnbull?" There was no hesitation on their part. You pay him as a starter. He's a starter. He's a starter until he's not. After the game, I thought it was interesting. Taijuan Walker was talking about how good he felt. He felt great and said that's as good as he's felt in a while. And he did have a lot of first pitch strikes. The problem was he didn't have a lot of swings and misses. It was only about 4. When you're looking at the number of pitches that he threw and the quality of the pitches that he threw, I thought it was very interesting that he thought he felt great, but he just missed some of those spots. So is that something that he feels like he can correct, that he's going to get a chance to correct? That is something I don't know. I mean, they know they have Spencer Turnbull out there. I didn't like that they used him in a non-really high-leverage situation, but they had to get him some run over the weekend, and they did. And it was the game that they won. They just needed someone to come in there, and he hadn't gotten a lot of work. So I think it'll be interesting. I think the next start could be something they would really watch for Taijuan Walker. I would think that would be the one that's going to make a decision for them if they need to go away from him for a bit, or if he thinks something's plaguing him. He says he felt great, though.
Yeah, and Topper said after the game, too, he thought that Walker looked good, but I agree with you. It's all coming down to that contract. Obviously, Walker, 4 years, $72 million. Turnbull, 1 year, $2 million. A little bit of a difference there. But when you compare 6 games as a starter for Turnbull compared to 6 games as a starter for Walker, they both pitched a little over 32 innings. But you look at Walker, he's given up 40 hits over those 32 innings. Turnbull, 17. 20 earned runs for Walker, 6 for Turnbull. A 5.51 ERA for Walker, a 1.67 ERA for Turnbull. 36 strikeouts for Turnbull, only 25 for Walker. So I get it, the money. You'd love to see that you're paying this starter all this money that he's going to be able to perform. But it had me thinking of 2008, Adam Eaton. Because they paid Adam Eaton a ton of money, but he wasn't the reason you win a World Series. He pissed off a lot of Phillies fans even showing up for the ring ceremony when they gave him his ring. But, you know, we've seen it before. You can't let money dictate. And I think Andrew made a good point this morning. It reminds you a little bit of the James Bradbury situation with the Eagles, that you kept rolling him out even though you knew the better option was probably one of the rookies.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that the decision has to be be made and be made at some point quickly. You don't want to wait until the wheels have completely come off of Taijuan Walker if that's going to be the case. But you have committed that money to him, and therefore you show that commitment in the ways of starting him. Taking him out of that rotation, you do wonder what that would do to a starting pitcher's psyche. I mean, obviously, Spencer Turnbull hasn't always been a starter, so he's not used to. He doesn't come into this season thinking, I'm going to be the fifth starter. That's not his mindset. His mindset is, I'm trying to make this team. I'm trying to do everything I can. They need me to start. I'm going to do that. They need me to go in the bullpen. I don't like it because I did have such a good start to the season. But, I mean, let's face it. I do think Spencer Turnbull has good stuff. He's not a sub-3 ERA guy for a season, but he probably could hover around there. And if you give him the opportunity, he is a guy that they have in their back pocket, and they're treating him as such. And I'm sure there's been conversations to that. If something goes on, somebody gets injured, somebody's having an off day, whatever it is, you're our guy. I would like to see him in like longer relief sessions to kind of keep him stretched out. I would also like to see him in higher leverage situations to keep him kind of sharp. I think that the tendency to do that with guys that are starters is more typical. They just haven't had a lot of those opportunities in the last 3 weeks now since he's gone back to the bullpen. There hasn't been that bullpen's been the least used bullpen in all of baseball. So they haven't had a lot of situations in order to use him. They've come to a head recently, and that's why I think you're having the conversation. What do you do now with Taijuan Walker? He had another bad start. The time before he wasn't terrible. So you're wondering, like, is it something he can figure out? And I'm sure those are conversations they're having right now, as he is not scheduled to pitch for another 4.5 days at this point. But I would think that it's going to be a longer look in the next outing for him.
Yeah, and as much as I'm saying, hey, I'm overreacting today, one of the great things about Rob Thompson over the last 3 seasons is he's shown patience with this team. You look at when he took over for Joe Girardi, what happened there. Last year, they come out to the slow start. He preached patience. Look what happens there. So in Topper, we trust. If he thinks, hey, let's be patient, let's see what we have in Taijuan Walker because his stuff does look good, who am I to disagree with Rob Thompson right now?
Yeah, and like you said, like patience. Some people, the other side of that is stubbornness, I think some people would say. But he has a commitment to his players. And I think for me, when you're looking at the differences between Taijuan Walker and Spencer Turnbull, it's not just the ERA. Obviously, that sticks up because one has doubled the other one. It's the walks, and I think that's what has been problematic. He had 2 walks yesterday at an inopportune time. They turned right into runs. You can't do that. Those are going to come back to haunt you. And I think that you look at the whip for a guy like Spencer Turnbull, and it's just over 1. That's a big difference for me as far as a guy that says he's feeling good and then pitching well. Different from I feel good, but you're still not pitching well. The walks are what are going to tell me the story. So when they're looking at this, and I do appreciate that Rob Thompson has that commitment to his players, and I think that's one of the things that makes him such a great manager and such a great manager for this team in particular is that commitment, is that belief in them. But at some point you have to really look and see what's in front of you, and that's why I think it is so important that I'm sure they're going to examine and see, break down everything that they saw from Walker in this last outing, and then see how he goes the next one. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is some conversations that need to be had in the next week or so.
Yeah, and it was frustrating yesterday because, okay, he has the rough second inning. They go down 3-0, but then the Phillies lineup battles back. You take the lead, you go up 4-3, and then they give it right back in the 5th. That was frustrating. Ray, what would you do if you're a Topper? Are you still giving Taijuan Walker some more chances, or are you turning it over to Spencer Turnbull?
I mean, right now, I think they're going to continue to give him more chances. And I think the one thing that plays to that is Spencer Turnbull, the number of innings that he's pitched every season since 2019. I mean, I think he hasn't gone over 57 innings since that 2019 season. So he's not a guy, when we talk about being stretched out, he was stretched out in the rotation, but we haven't seen him do that over the course of a full season in a while. I think it's going to keep him just fresh for an entire year. At this point, though, I've worn thin on my welcome of Taijuan Walker. Since July 1st of last season, his ERA is over 5. I mean, this is not just a guy that is struggling right now, and it might be a little unfair because he has been known to fade at the end of in the second half of seasons to just include the second half of last year, but that's also a trend with him. If we're not getting this good early season, he has not shown you that he's able to sustain it over the full 162. So I'm concerned right now. One, he's getting barreled like crazy. I think just watching it, you're not watching a pitcher. Amy, you mentioned just the fact that they're squaring him up, they're hitting him. This is not a pitcher that you're watching like, ooh, he's the victim of bad luck. No, he's the victim of the fact his velocity's down. His splitter right now is not the out pitch it was a season ago, and hitters are just barreling him left and right. It's tough to watch, honestly. It's tough to watch him go out there with the dip in the velocity and the way that hitters are just squaring him up. So I'm ready. I'm ready to start exploring that way. I understand if maybe they try and take it into that second week. You got to give the guy every opportunity, given what you're paying him and given the fact that, it is a full 162. We're not talking about – that's where the James Bradbury comparison drops for me, where it's not like this is a football season worth. He's won every 5 games. So if we see him 3 or 4 more times to give him that opportunity and he shows you, yeah, there's nothing left in the tank, all right, fine, go to Spencer Turnbull. They're going to give him every opportunity because the money's there and because in terms of his impact on the game, they've somehow still managed to win a lot of his starts. He's gotten, I think, if I was Cole Hamels watching the Phillies right now and watching this support Taijuan Walker gets, I'd be upset about my career because if he got the run support that Taijuan Walker's gotten in his starts, he'd have a lot more wins.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you go back to the end of last season, what Ray was just talking about. Let's think about in the postseason. How many times you see Taijuan Walker in the postseason? 0.0.
Yeah.
They didn't even use him. He wasn't even a factor because of his velocity being down all over the place, really. You mentioned the splitter. He doesn't even use that as much as he used it last year. It's definitely not the out pitch that it was.
He wasn't happy that he wasn't included in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, I mean, no one wants to be left off the postseason, basically, like mindset.
I mean, he basically stood on the top step the entire postseason.
Yeah, they couldn't use him. It was just he was too wild.
Now, look, we're talking about our 5th starter, which is a good problem to have, that's what we're talking about right now. But you look at this team, you look at where they are. Yeah, they've lost 2 in a row, but they're still 38-17. They're still 6 games up on the Atlanta Braves, who unfortunately injuries are crushing that team. You hate to see that, you really do. But did these last 4 games, Amy, expose any weaknesses for you with the Phillies that have you concerned?
Concern's probably too strong of a word. For whatever reason, I know it's kind of a crazy stat because it goes back so many years, but they don't play well at Coors Field or at Oracle Park. For whatever reason. I mean, different players, different team, same results. They just struggle there. They struggle at both of those places. And those teams Rockies certainly haven't traditionally been good in that span of the last 5 years. It's just one of those things. So I think defense is probably the only thing that would raise kind of a little bit of a red flag. Maybe I'll call it a light pink flag for me.
There you go.
Just because their defense does struggle at times. This team defensively is not the strongest team in the National League. They can get by. They have guys that play the positions quite well, certain ones. But let's face it, their right fielder is not a great right fielder defensively. Center field, depending out there, they have a good center fielder at times. Left field, fine. Third base, I know we're going to talk about Alec Boehm. Shortstop, good. First base, Bryce Harper's been playing that, a hair longer than you and I have. So I think he does an okay job. But that's the thing, you're always just like, okay. And then obviously JT Realmuto, excellent at his position. So I think they've got some questions there defensively. The mindset for this team is, all right, we're good enough and defensively to get through and get by because we have excellent starting pitching. We have excellent relievers. And then we score on average. They plate about 5.5 runs until this past weekend. That kind of dipped down just a little bit, but it's still over 5 runs per inning over the course so far of the season. So you figure all those things together, it's okay that you have, just so defense. But that would be the only thing because when you're in and you're going forward and you're thinking about games that are going to be really close or opportunities that you need to have to close games out, defense is where your questions are going to be.
Yeah, and when you talk about defense, I've been someone who's defended the decision to have Johan Rojas in center field, even though he's not the best at the plate. Did get a couple hits last night. But it frustrated me that Rojas is in center field for his defense. You can't make a mental mistake like he did yesterday, which is throwing the third instead of cutting the runner off at second. You allow that runner to advance, and then that results in 2 runs on the base hit instead of only 1. Little things like that I don't have patience for because that's a mental mistake. That's not – look, Alec Boehm, some tough balls yesterday. It's going to happen. He said after the game, look, it happens in a 162-game season. But when you have Rojas specifically in your lineup for his defense, you can't make mental mistakes like that.
Yeah, I mean, that was obviously a slip up on his part. And I think that was one of those cases of trying to overthink certain things, trying to do too much. Rojas has surprised some people with his bat. I don't know that his defense is that much better than a Christian Pache that I'm like, oh my God, I have to have him out there. But I mean, there's the reason he is out there is because his defense is that good. I think Pache plays a fine center field. We even saw the other day when they switched it out, Brandon Marsh came over and played center field, and that was at Coors Field, which is an absolute monstrosity out there. For those of you who watch that game, you can see how those guys have to play so deep because of how that ballpark is set up, and then the wind always walks it down. So you're watching these guys run all over the place. I think that's where you do have a guy like Rojas out there in a place like Coors Field, that cavernous type of environment. Miami's another one that comes to mind. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those games where it seemed like every good thing that they did, there was three things that went against them, whether it was the pitching that wasn't so great, the defense that wasn't so great, or just mental miscues and swinging at bad pitches from Blake Snell, which I thought they should have roughed him up just a little bit more. I know they chased him after 4, but it felt like they should have been able to pile on a little bit more on a guy that had been struggling as mightily as Blake Snell had been.
Yeah, the bats so far on this West Coast trip haven't really been there as much as we would hope. They had that one big inning against the Rockies, but
it was a good inning to have a big one.
Yeah, it was
6 in the ninth.
Another comeback win for them, leading the Major League Baseball. But you mentioned center field, and this is my overreaction of watching the last few games. And I'm admitting that this is an overreaction, but you look at what Edmundo Sosa has done since he's come into this lineup. Since Trey Turner went out, Edmundo Sosa has been unbelievable at shortstop, the production you're getting from him at the plate. Sosa's batting .316. He has 3 home runs, 13 RBIs. He has a slugging percentage over 600. His OPS 1.001. He has 4 triples, had another one yesterday, leads the National League in triples. Now, Trey Turner had a little bit of a setback the other day, but assuming Turner comes back and Sosa continues to hit the way he's hitting, here's my overreaction. I'm putting Trey Turner in the outfield. I'm keeping Sosa at shortstop. And Turner has played outfield before. I know you got to go all the way back to 2016. He played 45 games at center field. I'm not even saying put him in center field. Maybe you put him in left, you slide Marsh over to center, and now that fixes the lack of production you get from your outfielders at the plate. Talk me out of it, Amy. Talk me out of it.
You're gonna have a guy that's coming back from a hamstring injury play the outfield.
Well, you're not going to bring him back until he's healthy. He's still got to run the bases, so if he's not healthy enough to play outfield, he shouldn't be healthy enough to run the bases.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not moving Trey Turner anywhere. That's his position. He's the shortstop. If anything, I would switch he and Bryson Stott.
So you would put Turner at second.
Bryson Stott's the best shortstop on the team.
But that still doesn't help you keep Sosa's bat in the lineup. So
that's a difficult thing. And you mentioned the numbers overall, but his numbers are even better when you just look at the 63 plate appearances that he's had since Trey Turner went down. His slugging is like 680 or something insane. Slugging, not on base, his slugging. And I think his batting average is over 350 in the games that he's played without Trey Turner on the field. To say that is important to a team when a guy goes down that having the season that Trey Turner had been is an understatement of the year. You want to try to find a way, and I hear you want to try to find a way to keep Edmundo Sosa on the field for his production. I don't know that what the right answer is. I don't know that I could put him in the outfield, given the fact that he's only played 45 games there. It was 8 years ago, and he's coming back from a hamstring injury, and that would concern me. I know he's got to run still, but being at shortstop versus being in left field or center field and having to roam all around there would raise a little red flag for me.
Yeah, and with
a pink flag, I guess.
Another pink flag.
Him.
But with Sosa playing so well, there is no reason to rush Turner back. And that's the good thing. You don't have to, because you're right. When you have a hamstring, we've seen it. You could tweak it again if they rush him back. So I'm okay. Hey, let's Turner take his time here.
Yeah, I mean, so he had been ramping up as far as his running, and I know we all saw some of the video. He was running here, and then he was running out in Coors Field and trying to work his way up, and then he felt some soreness after one of them. I think it was either Friday or Saturday, and they're like, all right, no worries. We don't have to go ahead and do anything crazy. I think they were trying to see if they could get him somewhat back. We're well ahead of that 6-week timetable, which I always assumed was going to be something on the, positive end. He was going to try to come back quicker if he could. And so maybe this was just a reminder to him, like, listen, this is a 6-week injury minimum. That's what we planned for, 6 weeks. So 3 weeks, let's not go crazy. You're not trying to come back before the London series. You're not trying to do anything like that. Because when we saw him ramping up, I think there was some thought process like, oh, is this guy going to be back in 2 weeks? Like, what are we doing? And I thought maybe that was actually like a good thing. Like, all right, you felt a little soreness, more soreness than you would have thought you would have had at this point. That's fine. Take it easy. Take another couple of days, relax, and then, we'll ramp it back up again.
So I want to hear from you today. Did these last few games expose any weaknesses for you? And would you consider my overreaction move, which is put Trey Turner in the outfield, let Edmundo Sosa continue to be your shortstop with the level of production he's been giving you? You can get in by phone or by text, 610-632-0975. When we get back, I'm going to pose that question to Ray because I know Ray has an opinion on this. But I also want to talk about who's the Phillies' second best player right now. We all assume, and I think everyone would agree, Bryce Harper is their best player on the roster. But if you put the pitching staff aside, who's their second best player? I want to have that discussion with Amy and Ray as well. This is Middays. I'm Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul. We'll be right back. This 10 o'clock hour is brought to you by Window Nation. Take advantage of Window Nation's 50% off sale on all style windows. Plus, make no down payments with no payment and no interest for 12 months. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. I'm Bill Colarulo in for Bob Cooney today, along with Amy Fadul. We're talking about the Fightin' Phils. Trying not to overreact to their first back-to-back losses since April 25th. Still 6 games up on the Atlanta Braves. But we started the day kind of talking about, did these last few games expose any weaknesses for this team? And one of the ones that I think was exposed is Tawan Walker. We've seen him struggle as a starter since he came back. We know Spencer Turnbull's sitting there in the bullpen, capable of being a starter. Did some good things when we saw him as a starter. But Tawan Walker continues to struggle, although Rob Thompson was kind of happy with what he saw from him.
He was, and it was weird because they both said that they liked his stuff. They liked his. Rob Thompson said, "I thought he looked good at times," and then, of course, it was funny. In that same breath, he was like, "Oh yeah, no, he looked good," and then he struggled with his out pitch, and then it was the third and fourth inning, so he kind of talked himself out of it. But then Walker comes out, and we're talking to him on post game, and he says multiple times, in fact, "I felt good. I felt very good. It's as good as I felt all year." And I think when he said that, I remember writing it down. I'm sitting next to Ricky, and he and I looked at each other, and we're like, oh, it's as good as he's felt. So does that give you hope? Does that give you hope that he's going to figure something out? Because we were just talking about, it's not just the fact that he's walking guys at a higher rate than normal. It's not just the fact that he's lost his velocity. It's the fact that he's not pitching to the spots that he wants to get, and the batters are making him pay. The batters are barreling up and hitting those balls, not just softly. I mean, they're hard hit balls that are finding spots in the outfield that I think it's the most concerning. These are not bleeders. These are not line drives. These are absolute, doubles and triples that you saw him, being taken advantage of. And so when you have that coupled with a couple of the walks that you saw, that's why you saw those, the bigger inning for him. And I thought that was very confusing to me when he said it was as good as he's felt all year. And I didn't know if I should be hopeful that it's leading to something better for him the next start, or confused because he felt great and he did not look good.
Yeah, he didn't look good. And Ray's going to try to pull some audio of Topper and Tawan talking about that. But one of the other weaknesses that we've seen with this team to start the year is a lack of production at the plate from your outfielders. Now, Nick Castellanos in right, we know he's a streaky hitter. You don't expect him to be batting 198 the whole season, but he goes another 0 for 4 yesterday. I was hopeful. We saw him hit a home run back-to-back games, thinking, here it is. Here's the streak. Maybe not just yet. And then you look at some of these other outfielders. Pache's batting 196. Johan Rojas, 224, goes 2 for 3 yesterday, but not the hardest of hit balls for his 2 hits. Brandon Marsh has done okay at 267, but they seem still not to trust him against lefties. So when I'm looking for weaknesses, and again, we know we are overreacting. It's not football. This is only a few games of a 162-game season. But you could probably use more pop at the plate from your outfielders.
I mean, you want to have a little bit more consistency, right? You want to have guys that can get something going in a positive way. Nick Castellanos is the big question mark for me out there, and he's going to continue to be the big question mark. I know he's never had stats like this, but the longer it goes on, the more you think that, okay, well, this is just who he is. He would have to go on an incredible tear to get his batting average up to a respectable 240, 245, an incredible tear. And I have not seen anything, even when he had the back-to-back hits, there's not been anything with his approach at the plate that has shown me that he's going to be capable of going on a tear like that, of putting together, getting hits out of 8 in 9 games, or, a couple of doubles. His production is just not there. And it's starting to be a bigger concern, because if he's a guy, and that's where you're at. I mean, you're like you said, we're looking at the 5th starter, and you're looking at, but you're paying him a certain way. You've seen him produce a certain way, and you're confused as to why it's not translating anymore out there for him. It's creeping up again, and it's hard not to have a little bit of, recollection of how he struggled in the past and think, here we go again.
The craziest thing is Castellanos goes on that unbelievable tear in the playoffs last year where he's doing things that Mr. October, Reggie Jackson, never did. And you're thinking, wow, here's the Nick Castellanos that they paid all that money to. And then he just goes completely ice cold in the NLCS. And it's carried over, unfortunately, now through over 50 games of this regular season. So you have to hope that Casty's just going to come out of this funk. And I know the Phillies are hoping that Tawan Walker comes out of whatever funk he's in. They did think he pitched well last night. Ray was able to pull that audio of Rob Thompson post-game about Tawan Walker's performance. Listen to this.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Ty's stuff was pretty good. Second inning, again, leadoff walk and a bunch of pitches in the second inning. I don't know what that is, but it's 3 days in a row. But I thought his stuff was better tonight. Velo ticked up. I thought. So the splitter got better. There were innings when he was really locating his fastball. We didn't help him defensively.
So that was Topper post-game. Seems to be happy with Walker's stuff. Hey, we didn't help him defensively, which they didn't. 3 errors is tough to overcome sometimes. 2 by Alec Boehm, that one by Merrifield at second. That was frustrating. But, you mentioned it, Amy. You did post-game with Ricky Bowe yesterday, and both of you were kind of surprised when Topper said it.
Yeah, just because you heard him there, and he's like, oh, I thought he looked good. Of course, he had the leadoff walk, like we did 3 days in a row. So there's frustration in what he's talking about. But I think when they break it down, they're looking for certain things. They're looking for the placement. Obviously they talk to Real Muto after the game, and they kind of everybody gets on the same page, and they break down what they saw. What was good, what was bad? Why were the walks there? Why were the balls hit how they were? Was his velocity down overall, which it was? His velocity on every single pitch is down from where it's normal. It not just this outing, but overall. You're looking at, he could get away with it in years past because his fastball was 95, 96. It's not there anymore. He's not hitting those spots. So when you lose the velocity, obviously you have to be a lot more precise in your pitches. And he just was letting them go out over the plate. He was leaving some of them high, and guys were obviously making him pay. So they have to look at all of those things. When they say he looked good, they liked some of the things that he did, and then he said right away, well, I didn't like the walks. And then we had a leadoff walk, and those leadoff walks hurt them. Again, we saw that in Coors Field. The walks hurt them as you're going to. If you're pitching not to contact and you're pitching to try to find your place and you're walking guys, they're going to barrel up and make you pay. And that's what you saw in these games, I think, between the Rockies and then, of course, yesterday against the Giants. So, yeah, it was interesting that he said he felt good, and then you heard Rob Thompson say he looked good, and you're thinking, well, what looked good? Because it didn't look good from the outset.
No, it didn't, and you don't know, is this Topper just trying to keep things positive with Walker and just seeing if he can come out of this because of the contract, which we talked about earlier? They obviously gave him a ton of money, 4 years, $72 million, but it didn't stop them from not bringing him out at all in the postseason last year, so we'll see if he can get his stuff together. But we don't want to be all negative today because this team still is the best team in baseball, although they've had a couple tough games. So the question I asked before the break was, I think we all would assume that Bryce Harper is the best player on this baseball team. But it's a good problem to have because when you look around, well, who's the second best? I think that's actually a tough question to answer, and not because there aren't any options, because there's so many where you could say who the second best player on this baseball team is. Amy, if I had you had to look now. You look at the first 50-something games that this team has had. Who would you say the second best player? And I'm going to take pitchers off the board because I think Wheeler, Nola, and Ranger could certainly be near the top. But who would you say is the second best player in this lineup?
JT Realmuto.
You stole my answer, Amy.
I mean, it's the correct answer.
It is the correct answer.
This is going to be a brutal segment for us.
Because we're all saying JT.
I mean, it's true. Your point, though, is a valid one in the fact that you can choose good things from other players. It's not that JT Realmuto is the only answer because he's consistent, he's got the hitting streak, and you're defensively the best. He's the best catcher in baseball, all the other stuff. You could say Alec Boehm, but you'd have a but with there. Oh, but his defense is not so great. But the man's hitting, 311, 313?
311, yep.
And he's struggled recently, 3 for 21 in his last couple of games. But overall, tremendous, still tied for the National League, 47 RBI. I mean, he's killing it, right? You go to Bryson Stott. He's been in a little bit of a skid, but, I mean, he's still killing it out there. You're thinking, that guy's very good as well. And then I think that you could take away things from other players, but the answer is JT Realmuto. He is beyond consistent. He does his position exceptionally well behind the plate, managing both the starting rotation and the relievers. And then, of course, we can see what he does at the bat. So I think that that's the only answer.
Yeah, I don't think it's the wrong answer. I think you're probably correct. That was my answer as well because of what he does behind the plate. And you look at last season, not that JT was bad at the plate, but he wasn't as good as we've seen in previous years. And now with him hitting and doing what he does behind the plate, this is why he's the best catcher in baseball.
BCIB.
The BCIB. And he does so much for this team. Now, you know what's interesting is Kyle Schwarber, you can't say is the second best player because he doesn't play the field. But what surprised me, and I'll play that clip when we get back, Buster Olney was on the morning show last week, and he talked about how important Kyle Schwarber is, not as a hitter, but as a leader on this team. And I never realized that about Kyle Schwarber as much as how important of a leader he is. So we'll get into that when we get back. And we want to continue to hear from you. Maybe we got to say the third best player, Amy. The third best player
Maybe
on this team.
they've got a different second best player.
Maybe there's a different second best player, but we'll continue to hear from you. 610-632-0975. And did this last few games, did it expose any weaknesses for you, for this Phillies team? Is there anything you want to see them address? We talked about Tawan Walker. We've talked about maybe some more pop from the bats in the outfield. So we'll continue to talk about that. And I threw out the crazy overreaction. Is there any way when Trey Turner comes back that you consider keeping Edmundo Sosa at shortstop and putting Trey Turner in the outfield? Overreaction, I know, but can you really take Sosa's bat out of the lineup right now? And I want to get Ray's reaction on that as well when we get back, but I do want to play that clip of Buster Olney talking about Kyle Schwarber's leadership on this team. This is Middays. I'm Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul. We'll be right back. Phillies dropped back-to-back games for the first time since April 24th, but they're still the best team in baseball, still 6 games up in the National League East. So we did start the show talking about, did this last few games expose any weaknesses? But now we're trying to keep it positive, and we're talking about, well, who is the second best player on this Phillies team? Because I think everyone would agree that Bryce Harper is your best player. But then we did all agree, well, JT Realmuto is probably your second best. I'm Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul today. We're filling in for Bob Cooney.
We sure are.
But I say JT Realmuto. Amy says JT. Ray agrees with it. But you look at Kyle Schwarber, and I know he's only the DH. I know he hasn't turned into the June version of Kyle Schwarber yet, although we did see a monster home run last night. But Buster Olney joined the morning show with Kincade and Salciunas last week. And I was shocked to hear how important of a leader Kyle Schwarber is in this clubhouse. Listen to Buster Olney.
Generally speaking, in this era, especially with social media, it is important for the players to relate to each other and connect with each other, which is why, and I'm sure I said this to you before, I think Kyle Schwarber is as great a teammate in fostering that sort of clubhouse as any player that I've ever been around. He works at it. It matters to him. Kevin Long, the hitting coach, said to me, every day when Kyle Schwarber shows up, he cares about 2 things, winning and about pulling players together, and I think that manifests with that group.
So that was Buster Olney, and he's talking about Kyle Schwarber. And we say it a lot, Amy, when we talk about this Phillies team. One of the X factors that they have, one of the things that's that intangible, are the vibes. It's the culture of this clubhouse. They really look like they enjoy playing together. They look like they really care about one another. And to hear Olney talking about how Kyle Schwarber, that's one of the main priorities for him, something that he works at. I don't know if I appreciated how important Schwarber was to this clubhouse.
Yeah, I remember this was talked about a couple of years ago, and I think Buster Olney's probably talking about it. So Schwarber, been on a lot of teams, won a lot of games, won a World Series. He's that type of guy. He knows what it takes, and he knows it's little things and extra. So he gets to know these guys outside of the clubhouse, outside of the parameters of the ball field. And he'll go and he'll find they're interested in something. Oh, you like going to see art museum? Let's go do that. Oh, you like going to listen to some music? I've never listened to that music, but let's go listen to it. He's that kind of guy. So I remember those stories came out, Ray, 2 years ago, was it?
Yeah,
it was the run during the
it
NLCS,
might have been
maybe?
during that 2022 run.
And he's talking about like going to these crazy type of things, like stuff that he's never done before. But that's whatever the player liked to do, his teammate, and he wanted to get to know them on a personal level. And I think one, that's for his benefit because he wants to get to know them better. And 2, but if there is a guy that's coming to you, a guy that's as respected and as successful as Kyle Schwarber has been in this league, and he comes to you and says, hey, what do you like to do? Let's go do that. That lets me know that he's invested in me, and I want to make sure that I do what I can to help him help my team. It just shows that level of commitment, I think, on his part and the rest of the team's part, because if someone is giving you that investment, then I think that you're a little bit more willing to kind of go out there because you know that person a little better and they seem to care about you. And I think there's something to that. I can't remember I'll have to look it up. There was some kind of music or something they had to go see that it was something completely off the wall.
The fun thing about this is I was trying to pull up that story while you're saying this, and I just went Kyle Schwarber teammate to start seeing it. You got like 6 or 7 different stories to choose from because everybody's got a great Kyle Schwarber story.
And that's the thing. It's not uncommon for him to do this, and he did it with a bunch of the teammates that he's trying to build a rapport with throughout the season. And we all know, that they help choose the song for Captain Vibe. Captain Vibes. Obviously, we're talking about Garrett Stubbs, who just had a birthday.
He did.
Yes, the
big hit over the weekend, too.
Big hit over the weekend. He had a nice game to fill in for JT the other day. But I think that there's something to be said for the guys that operate like that. They obviously perform on the field, but they know it's just as important how they perform with their teammates as far as garnering respect and respecting their teammates and getting to know them and making sure that they recognize everybody is in this all together. And I think you saw that come together in 2022, and it's just carried over now into 2024.
Yeah, so we're asking the question, who's the second best player? Because Bryce Harper obviously gets all the fanfare, even as the leader in that clubhouse. It's Bryce Harper. But you hear Buster Olney talking about Schwarber. We mentioned JT Realmuto. Ray, we got some text on this?
Yeah, we got people checking in, just talking about the different scenarios of the lineup right here. And We got a first-time texter trying to come in about keeping Sosa in the lineup when Turner returns is an obvious move. They want, and this is quite something, Bohm to left field. Improve the defense in the infield and adds offensive production to the outfield. Keep all 3 center fielders to cover days off and injuries until the trade deadline.
All right. I thought I was being crazy by suggesting keeping Edmundo Sosa at short and putting Trey Turner in the outfield. Now we're moving Alec Bohm to the outfield. Now we're losing our minds, right?
Yeah, I remember they once tried to take a homegrown corner infielder and move him to the outfield.
I knew you were going to say it. Talk about derailing somebody. What is he doing? I mean, he's still getting paid. Oh, Scott Kingery, where have you gone?
That's not even where I was going. I was going corner infield. They moved to the outfield. I was going Reese to left field.
Reese,
when
there
they
you go.
brought in Santana.
Remember that?
That was it.
Yeah, that didn't work.
Yeah.
They ruined Scott Kingery with all that.
With all the moves as well. Yeah, I would just say if we're worried about their defense as a corner infielder in this league, moving them to the outfield is usually
not going to be helpful.
I'm trying to, in my head, I'm watching Bohm tracking fly balls right now, and Alec Bohm, you've had a great start to the season. It's not something I want to watch.
No.
So on our YouTube channel, our friend Jim G's asking, well, can Edmundo Sosa move to right field? He's only played 1 game in his career in the outfield, so I'm not suggesting that we do that. Anybody else responding to keeping Sosa in the lineup?
There's actually a lineup question that doesn't have to do with Sosa because they've loved JT in the 2-hole so much. What do you do with the lineup when Turner returns?
That's a great question because I keep JT exactly where he is.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with it. He's got a 16-game hitting streak. But where do you slide Turner in when he does come back? Where do you put him in that lineup if you're keeping – obviously, Schwarber's leading off. We know that. They're not going to make that change, although people have asked for it.
Are they still asking for it, though? He's like Captain Singles right now.
I know. I still see it.
His on-base percentage is great. He walks like what? Listen, I don't know.
So what do you do?
We're committed. They're done. So yeah, you move everybody on down. Nick Castellanos, go on down, fella.
No problem moving Castellanos.
There you go.
No, so you would slide him in
5 or 6
at 5 or 6. Man, I would
get his
almost
legs
think
under him.
I would almost think about flipping Castellanos and Sosa. Well, Sosa's not going to be in the lineup anymore when Turner comes back. So, yeah, you just move Castellanos down to Sosa's spot and slide Turner right in there. Mm-hmm. And hopefully he protects. Now you got to pitch to Bohm if Turner's hitting like he was. It's a good problem to have. It really is a good problem to have that when you add Turner's bat back into this lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is when Trey Turner comes back, it's not like he's going to pick right back up and be like, yep, I'm batting .434 today. But I think that he will be able to still garner that kind of production eventually, and so then maybe you start him back at 5 or 6, and you can think about moving him back up. That's a conversation for another day. I mean, you're talking about somewhere in July at this point, and maybe you don't even make the move to move him up in the lineup until after the All-Star break. And you're looking at when he comes back and how long you want to be able to hit to get his legs under him and to make sure that everything is all copacetic, and then to see what JT's doing at that point. But JT has been really performing in that 2-hole. Now, obviously, he's not an everyday player. He's an almost everyday player. There are times when he has the day off. If it's a day-night situation, you'll see Stubbs in there. Maybe there's an occasion that's when you try Turner back at that 2 spot and see how he does. But those are going to be one-offs. It's Garrett Stubbs does not, unless there's something going on, Garrett Stubbs does not start 2 games in a row. So that's a question. It's a good question to have. Obviously, I think that we're at least a month away from even thinking about something like that. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea of keeping JT Realmuto in the 2-hole because of the production you've seen from him. He's been able to get on base at a very good clip, and then later in the game, he's able to move people over and even get them home.
All right, so we'll continue this conversation, but when we get back, I want to have some fun because the trade deadline isn't until July 30th in Major League Baseball. So I don't want to talk about, what players that are available could this team add. I want to have some fun. We're going to play a game, me, Amy, and Ray, and the callers and texters. We're going to look at our 3 teams. We'll keep the Flyers on the back burner here since they're in a rebuild, but we're going to look at the Phillies, the Eagles, and the Sixers, and we're going to ask the question. We'll start with the Phillies. If you could add one former Philly to this team right now, who would you add? You can call or you can text 610-632-0975. I'm excited to hear Amy and Ray's answer on this. I have one that I think would immediately win them the World Series. So we'll get into that when we get back. I'm Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul. This is Middays on The Fanatic. We'll be right back. What's up, everybody? Welcome back in. No Bob Cooney today. You got Bill Colarulo and Amy Fadul, along with Ray Dunn, as always. Fightin' Phils are still the best team in baseball. We could all relax a little bit. It's only been a couple of games. Let's hope they can get back in the winning column tonight. But we did spend some time in the beginning of the show talking about, did they have any weaknesses that got exposed? But now we're going to have a little bit of fun. Because the trade deadline isn't until July 30th. We don't know what players may become available or not. But what we do know is our Phillies history. So we're going to take a look back. And if you could add any Philly from the history of this franchise and put them on this team right now, who are you adding? So we want to hear from you. You can call or you can text 610-632-0975. I have mine that I think would instantly make this team World Series champs. But before I give you mine, Amy, let's hear yours.
Well, I thought about this one for a bit because there's some really good choices out there. Do you go with a power bat? Do you go with a shutdown pitcher? Like a Roy Halladay. Let's see him in his prime. But I'm going to go with the best Philly in the history of the franchise, the greatest third baseman ever, Mike Schmidt.
Wow, Michael Jack Schmidt. Now, though, let's play this through. You add Michael Jack Schmidt, greatest third baseman.
Yes. Sorry, Alec Boehm, you're not Michael Schmidt.
Yeah, so what are we doing with Alec Boehm?
Hey, the bench is a lovely place. You got a good bat. We can come off the bench.
You see this, right? 2 errors, and she's ready to put Alec Boehm on the bench. I can't believe it.
For Mike Schmidt, though.
4 errors in 6 games.
I can't
She's not
believe
like, let's bring back Ron Torres and let's send Boehm to the bench. No.
It's not Polanco out there for me right now. Okay?
I'll be honest. If out of the time machine walks Mike Schmidt, I think Alec Boehm might go sit on the bench himself. I think he would understand that moment. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it. This has been fun.
I think so. That is a very good answer. And it's interesting. You mentioned Roy Halladay. Could you imagine?
No, I know. That was my first choice. And I was like, pitching's not my biggest need. But I can't imagine a 1-2 punch of Zach Wheeler and Roy Halladay. Like that would be. Roy Halladay is by far, anybody that knows me, my favorite Philly by far. It's the amount of time that he spent in Philadelphia and the amount of love I have for him is disproportional. But it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, that would be an they're already a good pitching staff right now. But could you imagine Ranger Suarez as your 4th starter?
It's ridiculous.
That would be ridiculous. All right, I'll give you mine, and then we'll get raised. So I tried to really look at this team and not necessarily add the best player in franchise history, which arguably is Mike Schmidt. And I tried to say, well, what player would be the most useful on the current roster? And I look around the infield. I'm okay with our first baseman. I'm okay at second base, shortstop, and third. Where I think we're severely lacking in production is center field. So I'm adding one of the best center fielders, one of the best players, not only in Phillies history, but in Major League Baseball, and that's the one and only Richie Ashburn, taking over center field for Johan Rojas. Has a career batting average of .308, and I didn't know this until I started really researching Richie Ashburn. 6th in Major League Baseball history in putouts from the outfield. I always knew he could hit for average, could always get on base to make sure the guys behind him could drive him in. A lot of runs scored. I didn't realize he had as many putouts as he had. So Richie Ashburn joining the Fightin' Phils makes him a World Series champ. What do you think, Raymond?
All right, I'm going center field, too. I'm going a little bit more into the modern era of baseball.
I know who you're going with.
And I'm going to actually give a shout-out because someone was thinking along the same lines as me. Steve in Philadelphia. Steve in Philadelphia says, add Shane Victorino and the Phils are an all-time team. Well, yes, I realize you're adding a Hall of Famer to this team. I'm going to go with the whole sports started in the year 2000, my 21st century brain, and I'm going with Shane Victorino. I get Gold Glove production out in center field. I get a center fielder that hit, I believe it was like 278 as a Philly, 280 something as a Philly. OPS could be somewhere near 800. I'm all for it. Give me the flying Hawaiian. Give me a little more speed. Imagine today's game where you're limited to the number of pickoffs. You think he could steal 40-something bases, 45 bases, hit close to 300. I don't need to do the Rojas conversation anymore. I appreciate you, Johan. We appreciate you being here. I don't need to do the Pache conversation anymore. I'm cool. Brandon Marsh, you stay in left field where you could be a Gold Glover there. I had the Gold Glover in Shane Victorino in center field, and we'll worry about right field later.
And Shane Victorino's a good one because we just talked about how important the culture and the vibes in this clubhouse are. I think Victorino would fit right in, Amy, into this clubhouse.
I mean, not just for the captain vibe, but also for the production and what he has done in the postseason. I mean, you mentioned his numbers, Ray did, but you look at just his postseason numbers. He's a guy that he was sought after by other teams to help them get over their hump. I mean, that's who he became. He was like the Darren Dalton. We need a leadership guy and a guy that's been here and knows what it takes. Boston Red Sox, we'll take that guy. We'll have him. We'll bring him on. We don't really care exactly what he does production-wise. We know what he can do when he can add to it. That says a lot to me about how people view Shane Victorino, not just here in Philadelphia, but around the world of baseball.
So this is a fun conversation if you want to get in. 610-632-0975. You can call or you can text. What former Philly would you add to this current roster? We're going to get into the Eagles and the Sixers later as well. But let's go to the phones because Nick from Riverside wants to check in. What's up, Nick? You're on the Fanatic. You know what, Ray? I can't punch him up. My phone's not punching him up. There.
Nope, didn't work.
Nope. Can you punch him up from in there?
Was not able to. So we will figure that one out as we go.
Nick.
All right.
Let's see if we can get Jeff in Philadelphia.
Yeah, see if the line 2 works.
Let's see if line 2 works. What's up, Jeff? You're on the Fanatic.
Hey, yeah, I'm tired of getting out the antacid every time they call to the bullpen. I want lights out Lidge.
Oh,
wow,
nice.
Lights out Lidge.
Good one.
So, Jeff, we'll talk about Lidge in a second. So then I'm assuming you do not like this kind of closer by committee or Jose Alvarado as the answer. At the trade deadline, you want to see them go out and get a true closer?
If you could get somebody like Lidge, yeah.
I'd appreciate the call.
2008 Lidge.
Yeah, it's got to be. That's what I was going to say.
Specific.
You got to go lights out Lidge from 08. It's amazing. Went the entire season and postseason without blowing a single save, Amy.
Well, Alvarado, to be fair, has been an excellent bullpen. Alvarado, first blown save, albeit it was disappointing because it came in a game where you're thinking it's the Rockies who had 17 total wins, period, and the Phillies have 17 comeback wins. You're like, what in the world? And he gave up an absolute grapefruit to a guy who's, as I think Tom McCarthy called him, a light-hitting backup catcher. And I was like, really? This is the guy that's going to punish us? But it's a big ballpark. They obviously play it well. I think defensively the Rockies showed that that's their ballpark, and one of the reasons why, because I feel like the Phillies hit a ball every single time right to where those guys were. But one blown save in the first 51 games of the season doesn't maybe raise my hackles. I get it. I do think Alvarado is the closer. I think we've seen that. I know that they've not defined it as that and in the past, last season, and the season before included, there hasn't been that defined role. I know Craig Kimbrell obviously held it until he didn't. So they kind of went by the committee type of vibe, and there's not the definitive. And maybe that's just not how this team is going to operate as far as a definitive closer. But Alvarado has been their guy. It's the first blown save of the season. But if you have a chance to add a guy who was lights out, I mean, it's hard to say no. If you're bringing in just the 2008 version of him, it's hard to say no. It doesn't really matter who they've got out there.
Yeah, no, that was a great answer. But Alvarado has pitched really well. I mean, that home run he gave up the other night, it happens. It's in Colorado, and the guy who hits the home run really doesn't hit for power very often.
No.
So it was kind of a fluky pitch, but I've been happy with Alvarado. It was the first blown save. He's pitched very well this season. You just hope that – see, here's the problem sometimes is, I'm old school too, is I want one closer every single time you get to the ninth. You know who's coming out.
Don't you know Alvarado's coming out?
Well, you do now. But what I'm saying is you look at last year – that actually came back to haunt us because in the playoffs, knowing that Craig Kimbrell was the guy and you kept going to him, he clearly, towards the end of the season and in that NLCS, he just didn't have it anymore.
Well, yeah, and I think you've seen that now down with the Baltimore Orioles. Kimbrell has not had a very good – I mean, this guy is obviously up there in age. I think they were surprised by what they saw from Craig Kimbrell. I think he was a flyer, and they thought, oh, well, let's see if this guy has anything left in the tank, and he did. And then when the wheels started to come off, they didn't move on from him quickly enough. Now, there was times where they didn't use him in those leverage situations, and I think that was because they knew that you could not trust his stuff, and you didn't know what you were going to get. But I think, honestly, he was a surprise. I think they fully committed last year to thinking it's going to be closer by committee. He kind of comes to the forefront. He's having put together an all-star start to the season last year, and you're thinking, whoa, like where did this come from? He turned back the clock. So, yeah, I mean, it probably came back to bite them a bit, but I think that they moved on as quickly as they could have. I think Alvarado has shown that he is that guy. A closer has a very different mentality. And I think, he knew it. He knew he missed that pitch, and it happens. Rarely do you have the Brad Lidge where you don't blow an entire save all season. You look at some of the guys that have been around the league who have had that closer role, and it's just one of those things. It's disappointing. I think it's disappointing in not that the fact that he blew the save, but it was the situation that they were in, and that it was at Coors Field. And I was thinking, 2 outs, just get 1 out to this lowly Rockies team and move on from it. Of course, the antithesis of that is the fact that Bryce Harper was tossed in the first inning, the first at bat of that game for him. And in a 3-2 game, you think Bryce Harper couldn't have helped just a smidge? They couldn't have even maybe been in that situation.
Yeah, you're right. Look what he did in the game he comes back, Bryce Harper, with the 3-run shot in the ninth. He gets the single with the RBI. And that leads me to something I talked about this weekend. After that happened, after that night where Harper gets thrown in the first inning because clearly a strike was called that was a ball, I got upset. I started talking about robot umpires. We really can't go throughout the show today without mentioning an umpire who retired yesterday, Amy. Angel Hernandez makes the best call of his career, calling it a career. Someone that has been a polarizing figure for the past few years. And we talked about Kyle Schwarber earlier. I still love that clip of Schwarber losing his mind.
Who doesn't lose his mind like that? But Angel Hernandez had long since lost his fastball. I think any person that had watched any game that he was behind the plate thought, okay, maybe it's time. LASIK's not helping you at this point there, friend. It's just, you got to go. You got to go, friend.
And he only worked 10 games last season because of a back injury, but in those 10 games, Angel Hernandez missed 161 calls. Over the life of a 150-game season, which is about what these umpires work, that would have been over 2,400 missed calls, Amy.
Weird that he retired. Didn't see that coming. I wonder if he saw it coming.
Yeah, I think they're calling it a retirement, but it may have been a little bit of a forced retirement, right?
A suggested retirement.
Yeah. Hey,
you should retire.
Have you thought about this?
Yeah.
This is something you should do.
The umps, after everything that we talked about with robo-umps the last couple of days after the Harper thing, this is the best PR the umps could get. One of the worst is gone. The percentages are going to go up for us. A lot less missed calls.
120 thinks he's still scot-free.
So good.
120 is not scot-free. Wait until 120 comes to a game here. People will find that out, and I have no doubt you'll see the signs.
Yeah, and if you didn't get to catch the post-game show when Bryce Harper said 120, Amy's reaction on the post-game show was priceless. You couldn't stop laughing.
Because it was so great. So Bryce Harper is a student of the game. Anybody that's watched him post-game knows that. He can go back and name all these different players from different eras. He's naming, and someone asked him about the umpire, and he usually has a conversation. Bryce Harper is a professional, and you give those guys, a certain standard. And he said, I've had conversations with other professional umpires, and he called them professional umpires. And then he proceeded to name 5 umpires that he's had conversations with that are professional. And he says, 120 is... He called him by the number. The guy's name is Brian Walsh. He called him by the number. And if you know how umpiring works, the 120 means he's fairly new. So he's got a triple-digit number. And the fact when he called him 120, I was like, that's it. It was like after midnight at that point. I had a hard time recovering.
Yeah, Bryce Harper knew what he was doing with that.
Of course he did.
That was a good one.
It was amazing.
So we're continuing to talk about the Phillies. We're having a little fun adding a player from franchise history to this current team. If you want to get in, 610-632-0975. You can call or you can text. We're not going to go back to the phones because Chris from Delaware has somebody he'd add. What's up, Chris?
Hey, I'm glad somebody said Lidge. That was the obvious because it gave me time to think of somebody else. It just had to be the 08 Lidge, not the 09 Lidge.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. Here's somebody who would fit perfectly this year. It's somebody who, in the Phillies past, who was a great player on a not-so-good team who gets very little love and appreciation. He plays right field. He has a 400 on-base percentage. He walks 100 times. He's great. He's great, very selective at the plate. He was a 300 hitter. He produced. He was kind of slump-proof. Slump-proof? You got it? Who is it?
I don't know.
See, I told you he gets no love. Bobby Abreu.
Oh, I almost said Bobby Abreu.
Great call, Chris.
I almost said Bobby Abreu, but then I thought he said, is he fun-proof?
Funk.
Oh, that's what I was like. I was trucking along when he said right field, and I knew Bobby Abreu's on-base percentage because we were talking about him last week. And I thought, well, no. And then I said fun proof. I'm like, is Bobby Abreu not fun?
That's it. He wouldn't fit with this team. Bobby Abreu doesn't want to have any fun.
Honestly, that's where my head went. So my apologies to Chris from Delaware. I thought you said fun proof. And I was like, well, he seems like a fun guy. I feel like he would fit in with the vibes on this one. But Bobby Abreu is an underappreciated guy. I think he doesn't get a lot of love because he was here when the Phillies were pretty mired in mediocrity.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, he reminds me of it for different reasons. McNabb isn't necessarily as appreciated as he probably should be throughout history because they never got over that hump. But did Abreu ever really connect with the fan base, though? I mean, was he really
I think for
loved?
certain people, he did. I think he did. And maybe it's because he was the best player on a bad team. I think that's a connection. I still feel like I see Abreu jerseys when I go to the game. Not a lot. I always love looking for, like, the random jersey out there, like the random Dane Sardinia or something. You know what I mean? Like, if I ever see that one, that'll be it. That would take the cake for me.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a pretty interesting one to see.
But you know what I mean? When you see like ones like that, I'm like,
again, you're talking to the guy that's got the Mayberry jersey.
Yeah,
so
right. And the bobblehead from Iron
And the bobblehead, that's right. We got to find the right place at home.
I feel like I think just there wasn't a lot of connection, period, with those teams for a lot of people, and so you don't hear about the love because they were not very good. It's like you're going back to like, the 96 team, 97, 98. They're not great years. And so I think, but he was a well-liked player, I think, on that team. But I think there wasn't a whole lot of things to like about it, so you don't get the connection there.
Yeah, I don't think they were selling out a day game in the middle of May.
42,000 on a Thursday.
Like they are now. Now, one of our YouTube family, Jim G, said Abreu was good, but I'd still go with Jason Worth.
Nice player. Very nice player.
Another guy that would fit into this clubhouse really well, that's for sure. Well, let's go back to the phones because we're going to try to punch up Nick from Riverside again. What's up, Nick? You're on the Fanatic.
Hey, guys. How you doing? How's your
Nick.
morning going?
Going well, man.
All right. Well, it's funny you just mentioned that because my decision, I was going to say prime Jason Worth would be a great decision. I would say put him in right field and move Castellanos to left. How do you feel about that?
Or you just move Castellanos on down.
Yeah, or you just move Castellanos off the team, potentially.
I like this pick,
yeah?
though.
Yeah.
I like this pick. Jason Worth, people, I think because of where he played and what else that team did, I think Jason Worth sometimes is an under-the-radar type of guy. But you have to really go back and remember what he did in 08. And then how mad we were when he left. And then you look at the money and you think, now, like looking back now, $120 million, of course he left. Of course he left. But he went to the Nationals and it was like, really?
Yeah, I never fault a guy for going and trying to get that big contract, but it does hurt when they go to a team
Really?
like
It's
the Nationals. Well, hey, I'm okay when a National wants to come here, Mr. Bryce Harper. That was
Trey
okay.
Turner. They all
Trey
came here. Kyle Schwarber. If you were
Worth
a
was an
Nationals,
inside
come
agent.
on. Like Al Horford?
Yes, that's exactly it. Jason Worth was our Al Horford.
Please, with the Al Horford, watching him celebrate. Obviously, if you're not following the NBA playoffs after the Sixers were eliminated, the Celtics sweep last night. They're going to the NBA Finals, and you see Al Horford up there, and it's how the heck is this guy still playing at a high level when it looked like he couldn't do a single thing here, Amy, when the Sixers got him?
Because he was a sleeper agent, I think.
He's our sleeper agent.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Bob,
There's
you
one
said
guy.
that.
There's one guy on this program that doesn't believe it. He's
Bob.
not here today.
Bob
you
is
know?
like, not, and Ray and I are like, nope, I'm convinced.
Terrible.
He's taking a 15-year
I mean, the man-
vacation. So when we
We'll
talk
see him,
to him,
yeah, Labor Day, I think we'll see him. Is that
probably.
Maybe next
something
year.
like that.
Yeah, absolutely terrible. Well, when we get back, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles because they will be back on the practice field today. OTAs resume. And we'll continue to have fun with the Who Would You Add a little bit later on in the show with the Eagles. But what I want to talk to Amy about is we keep looking at this defense for the Philadelphia Eagles and asking about the question marks. And I want to look at it from a different perspective. Are there any sure things on that defense? We'll get into that when we get back. This is Middays. I'm Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul. Don't go anywhere. No Bob Cooney today. You get Bill Colarulo and Amy Fadul as Bob finishes up his vacation. But you know who's not on vacation today? The Philadelphia Eagles. OTAs kick back up today. They'll be on the practice field today, Wednesday, and Thursday. We know they were on the practice field last week. Now, interestingly, OTAs are permitted. They're voluntary, but they're permitted by the NFL. It's Article 21 of the CBA. It says teams can hold up to 10 OTAs, which is just a fancy word for practice. You could do some 7-on-7 drills, 9-on-7, 11-on-11, but no live contact. But interestingly, a story came out today that the NFLPA is making a proposal to the NFL owners to completely overhaul the offseason as soon as next year, where they would eliminate OTAs. But what they would do is they would put a longer training camp ramp up where maybe players would have to report mid-June or early July. So we'll have to keep monitoring that. But the Eagles are taking advantage of 6 OTA opportunities. They would have had 10 if they wanted it. They're only going to do 6. They are going to do a mandatory mini camp in June 4th, 5th, and 6th, where then it's mandatory, so players have to show up. But last week, when it was open to the media, there was a few players who didn't come. James Bradbury wasn't there. Josh Sweat, Lane Johnson, Devontae Smith, Keely Ringo, new tight end C.J. Uzama, and kicker Jake Elliott weren't there. But what it highlighted with some of those players not being there was some of these position battles on defense. And I said before the break, a lot of us asked the question, well, look at all the question marks on defense. And I want to look at it from another perspective. Are there any sure things on the defensive side of the football? Because I look across that defensive line, the linebackers, the corners, the safeties. And as much as I think there's a lot of upside for this defense, more upside than last year, I think the ceiling's a lot higher than last year, I don't think there is a single sure thing on that defense. Because you look at some of your best players on the defensive side of the football. Darius Slay, he's 33 years old. Then you look at Jalen Carter, second year. We don't know how he's going to take that second-year leap. I'm hoping he does. But, Amy, when I look at that defense, yes, the ceiling's high, but I don't think there's a single sure thing on the entire side of that football.
I mean, I think you just described what plagued them last year, right? Like that one of the reasons they were shaky to start, despite the 10-1 start overall to the team, the defense was not lights out from the jump last year either. Then when everything came off, the defense was exposed. You're looking at a team that allowed, 38 points on average in their final 8 games. I mean, the defense was suspect. And I think that there's no doubt about it. It's not like that they overhauled it in any meaningful way. There's guys that are back. There's guys that are replacing guys, and there's guys that you're hoping step up. But there wasn't a big, giant free agent signing you thought, yep, this is the one that's going to put us right over the edge. There's some nice pickups. I think they drafted well at certain positions on that defense. And I think that you have the hope that Jalen Carter is the Jalen Carter you drafted and that you saw at the beginning of the season. He's the only one that I don't have that much concern about. That guy, to me, is exactly who you thought he was going to be. I know that he fell off the last 3 or 4 games, really, from where his production was at the beginning of the season, but I don't have as many questions about him. Jordan Davis is a big question mark for me. We can go into the linebacking core as a whole as a question. Nakobe Dean has yet to become the player that they expected. Nolan Smith is another question. So there's definitely more questions than not. But as far as like having one surefire guy that I'm not worried about, I would just say Jalen Carter's the only one for me that I look at and think. And it's hard to not say Slay just because of what you've seen from him, how he produces, what he's able to do on the field. But you mentioned his age, and you wonder if there might be some breakdown at some point. I don't have a lot of questions about him. It's not something in the forefront of my mind. But I've talked about 2 players, talked about 2 as not having real concerns. Well, everybody else, absolutely.
Yeah, and you mentioned Darius Slay and Jalen Carter. Let's look at the other positions. There is no sure thing at any position. I know a lot of people were excited about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson coming back at safety, which has excited me as well. But the issue with him isn't necessarily his skill. It's, well, can he stay healthy? Because Avonte Maddox, one of the best nickel corners in the NFL when he's healthy, a lot of Eagles fans have checked out on him because he can't stay healthy. Well, if you look at Chauncey Gardner-Johnson over the last 2 seasons, last year he tears his pec in Detroit, really only plays 2 games. The year before, lacerated his kidney, I think it was, here in Philadelphia. So he's another guy who's had some injury history. So I'm not ready to say, hey, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's a sure thing. Linebacker, you mentioned it. We're hoping the Kobe Dean could be the answer. We're hoping Devin White can show why he was drafted as high as he was a few years ago. But he's not a guarantee. There's a reason he was benched last year in Tampa. There's a reason why he had to sign a 1-year deal, prove-it deal with the Eagles. So there's another name along that defensive line where I think some people may say, oh, well, we know what we're getting out of him, and that would be Brandon Graham. The issue there, though, is you know what you're getting from BG.
How much are you getting him?
Exactly. You know what you're getting, but you're only getting it 25, 30% of the snaps. Well, what about Josh Sweat? Well, he's gone long stretches every season without getting sacks on the quarterback. And last year when they asked him to play an increased role where he played a career high in snaps, he couldn't deliver. So I do have concerns, and really the only 2 sure things, and I'm not even ready to say they're sure things, but the closest things to sure things, like you mentioned, Darius Slay, Jalen Carter. Well, Jalen Carter's going to have to figure out how to play at Fletcher Cox's level. And I know that's asking a lot of a second-year player, but for this defense to hum, for this defense to be a lot better than they were last year, you have to figure out how you're replacing the production you got from Fletcher. And even Fletcher Cox last year, in his last year before he retired, was playing at an extremely high level.
And a lot more than he probably expected, just because of the way that they schemed it and the way that they saw everybody else was struggling at times. Fletcher Cox was used a higher percentage than he expected, because if you talk to him in the offseason, in the preseason last year, he had accepted his role. He knew what he was signing up for. He knew when he came back here and they restructured everything that, listen, I'm going to be playing in a situational type of football. It was not situational about 5 games in. The guy's playing as many snaps as he had at times of the height of his career. So I think that not only was he playing at a very high level, he was playing a lot. It was quality and quantity for Fletcher Cox, not something he expected. And I think that maybe some people thought, well, maybe that means he's going to stay around more. Maybe that was what's precipitated, all right, this was great and all, but I can't keep doing this. This is actually a lot. So, Brandon Graham, you know what you're going to get from him, but he's not an every down guy. He's not going to be out there in the high percentages. You're looking at a guy you're going to see 30 to 40% of the time if you're lucky. So I think that, but I believe in Jalen Carter, and I don't believe it just because of what I saw at Georgia. He showed it at time. The way he started last year, it was like, oh, this guy is going to be the rookie defensive player of the year. There was no doubt in my mind. There was chances that I thought that he could, the way he started the first 4 games of the season, that he could be a guy that could have had votes for the overall defensive player of the year. We know where the production stopped. You wonder if it was the rookie wall or if it was people scheming against him and him just not figuring it out, as quickly. That's something they're going to have to dissect. Obviously, Vic Fangio has been tasked with that. I think that he can come up with systems now that will break Jalen free a little bit more than what we saw, because he did face a lot of doubles. But I think that Jalen Carter is a guy, to me, can fill those shoes. He has the tangibles and intangibles to do the stuff that Fletcher Cox did for this team. I don't know if he can do it in his second year, but you hope he gets somewhere close because they need him to.
Yeah, and look, Howie Roseman had a very good offseason in a lot of respects, but one of the things that frustrated me was you couldn't control that Fletcher Cox retired. You couldn't control that. The guy earned it. He wanted to retire. But what you could control was trading Hassan Reddick, because when we look at this defense, and I asked the question, are there any sure things? And we say, well, the closest thing to a sure thing is Darius Slay and Jalen Carter. If Hassan Reddick was on this team, we would be saying he's a sure thing. Getting double-digit sacks 4 seasons in a row. You know exactly what you're getting from Hassan Reddick. And it really frustrated me that a team that looked like, hey, we're going all in. We're going all in. We're signing Saquon Barkley. We're going to go out. We're going to make all of these moves. We're getting Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator. We're bringing in Kellen Moore as an offensive coordinator. That you turn around and you traded your best defensive player. And at the time, Amy, I thought, okay, He wants a ton of money. They're not going to be able to give him that much money. They don't want to. They trade him to New York, and now New York's got to give him a big deal. He hasn't gotten that new contract, which makes it even more frustrating that if he plays in New York under his current deal, I am going to be extremely frustrated that the Eagles didn't figure out a way to keep him.
You wonder if there's not something else there because of how well he fit in the system. And when you're looking at when they brought in Vic Fangio, it was the first thing people thought of, like, wow. I mean, you know who fits really well in a Vic Fangio system? Hassan Reddick, just in the style he plays and the way that he can come off and get to the quarterback and get home. You wonder if there's not something else there. What don't we know? Why would you jettison a guy that was clearly committed to being here in both words, which he had said, and seemingly in actions? And then, yeah, I don't think it's unfair for him to ask for a new deal. I don't think this is a punishment that he was, shipped off and then went to the Jets. The way that the deal was structured, too, in the fact that it's all the trade, it's all contingent upon how he performs, percentages, sacks. If he performs like he did here, it actually turns out well for both parties, but certainly for the Jets and the Eagles in this regard. So that's a big question for me as to what went wrong. And I feel like Howie's been asked it, he's addressed it in certain ways, but I feel like there's something being unsaid, and I don't know. Obviously, I can't know what that is because it seemed like on paper and in action of what you've seen from Hassan Reddick that he would be tailor-made for a Vic Fangio system, which is what the system everybody's been trying to use, and now you've got the architect of it, and you shipped off a guy that looked like he would be perfect in it. So I don't know. Is there something else there? Did they think they could get somebody for cheaper? And Bryce Huff, I'm not entirely sure, but I think there's something else there.
Yeah, it was a frustrating day. I was here on the Fanatic with Tyrone when they traded Hassan Reddick. So I was frustrated then. I'm still frustrated now. But I know there's a player that's still on this Eagles roster that frustrated a lot of fans last year, and that was James Bradberry. Now, I mentioned that James Bradberry did not come to OTAs. Well, Jeff McClain was on the morning show this morning, and he specifically talked about James Bradberry not being at OTAs. He even talked about, well, is James Bradberry going to get traded? Is he going to get cut? I know a lot of fans want that. So when we get back, I'm going to play that clip for you of Jeff McClain. And some Eagles fans may not be happy because JB may not be going anywhere. We'll play that when we get back. This is Middays. I'm Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul. Philadelphia Eagles back on the practice field today. OTAs resume. Big question is, will James Bradberry be there? He wasn't there when the practice was open to the media last week, but he's still on this team. I know some fans are frustrated by that because of the way last season went. But could James Bradberry be a part of the plans for this defense? We know there's a lot of question marks. Me and Amy just went over, well, let's not even look at the question marks. Let's ask ourselves, are there any sure things on that defense? And the only two names we really could come up with as being close to sure things are Jalen Carter at D-tackle, Darius Slay at corner. Everything else, you can make the argument, is a question mark. Well, outside corner is still a question mark opposite Darius Slay. Is Quinyon Mitchell going to be able to make that leap as a rookie? Is Isaiah Rodgers going to be able to play well after being off for an entire season? Is Keely Ringo ready to step up in his second year? Or could James Bradberry still be the answer? Well, Jeff McClain joined the morning show this morning, and he first was asked, well, is it a big deal that JB wasn't at OTAs last week? Here was McClain.
I checked with the team source. He had been there for a bunch of the OTAs already and before the OTAs for the spring workouts. So
Okay.
I don't think that was like he was staying away from the workouts or for that reason at all. And then I checked last year, too. He had missed some of the OTAs and even some of the open ones that we had been at. So that just, again, a veteran guy. We don't have to worry about James in terms of doing the necessary work that he needs to do to get himself ready for the season.
So that was Jeff McClain talking about, hey, they're not worried about him. They know he's going to do the necessary work to get ready for the season. I don't think any fans are necessarily questioning whether or not JB's going to put in the
They
work.
were fine for him not coming. That's okay. You don't need to show up, fella.
The question is he going to be on this team? And if he is he going to have a big role? And we've talked before about the cap ramifications for him, because if they were to move on from him before June 1st, it just didn't make sense. If you looked at his contract, if they did anything before June 1st, his cap number would skyrocket from $4.35 million to about $15 million in dead cap space. So it didn't make sense to cut him before June 1st. So a lot of fans are saying, well, maybe they'll cut him after June 1st. Well, Jeff McClain thinks maybe otherwise. Listen to this.
I don't think there's any doubt that there is some question about James's future with this team, and at the very least, whether he'll be a starting piece. Financially, I don't know if it benefits the Eagles to just flat out cut him. Certainly you can do it post June 1st and push some of that money into future years. It won't cost them as much this year in terms of the cap, but it's still a big charge. And I'm not saying that he'll definitely be here, but he could be here, and who knows, maybe they may find another role. Look, we saw him playing a little bit in the slot last year. There's something that they felt at certain points that he could do, and I think maybe that's where you project him more so, because it just the foot speed isn't there as much, and that's the job that's kind of still up for grabs. Maybe if they have to keep him, that's where they play James.
So that was McClain joining John Kincade and Andrew Salciunas this morning, Amy, talking about JB. And a lot of fans were frustrated with him last year. I get the money situation. I get the fact that it may make sense to just keep him on this roster. But-
Why?
Well,
Why?
because he's not a bad locker room guy,
Okay.
right? It gives you some depth, but it is, look, I said it may make sense. I'm with you.
I'm just wondering why.
Yeah, there's 14 corners right now on the roster.
Right.
At most, they keep 7. But for me, the plan at the nickel corner position can't be sliding JB inside.
No, I mean, and I don't mean that disparaging, like, why keep him? He obviously is an NFL corner, and I'm sure that he's got plenty to give. I just don't know, in the way that this team is constructed, that you need him. Depth, I don't know that you need depth at that. You mentioned it. Right now, there's a 90-man roster that's heading into these OTAs and camp later on. They got 14 cornerbacks on a 90-man roster is preposterous. So they have plenty of gentlemen to choose from. I don't know, when it's all said and done, that he's going to be in the top half that you keep. I don't know that. Maybe he's going to. Maybe it's the devil you know instead of the devil you don't. But I feel like there's other guys that have shown more. You know what you have in James Bradberry. I don't know why you would keep him as the other corner on the other. Certainly not as a starter. I just can't imagine that comes to fruition. I think that they have penciled in Quinyon Mitchell at the other corner to start alongside Darius Slay. There's other guys, and then for depth wise, you mentioned them. We haven't even talked about like a guy like Josh Jobe. I mean, there's a lot of guys on this roster that have seen playing time, that played, at times just as good as, if not better at, than James Bradberry. Why do you need to hold on to James Bradberry? Why can't you hold on to, and you could name 5 other guys?
Yeah, I mean, you really can literally name 5 other guys because they have so many corners on this team. So, you mentioned Quinyon Mitchell maybe being the starting outside corner. I still am very high on Keely Ringo.
Yeah,
I still
rightfully
think
so.
Yeah, I still think Keely can be a very good corner in this league. But Jeff specifically mentions the nickel corner there. And the Eagles, they cut Avonte Maddox early in the offseason. They let him go explore some options. There was nothing there, so he comes back on a more team-friendly deal. You do have Zach McPherson coming back from injury. We'll see what he can do. But the player that intrigues me a lot at that nickel corner position would be rookie Cooper DeJean, because we know he's very versatile, and that may be a way to get Cooper DeJean on the field as a rookie, is say, hey, look, you're going to be our nickel corner, because as good as Avonte Maddox has been, I mentioned a little bit earlier, can't stay healthy. 13 games in the last 2 seasons, so can you really rely on an Avonte Maddox? So when we get back, I want to do an exercise with Amy. Let's take a look at, we know how much Alec Boehm improved from last year to this year. The errors yesterday, we'll ignore them for a second. But he really took a leap from going from being a good player to being a extremely good player, maybe even a great player. You see the potential there. I want to look at this Eagles team, and I want to look at some of these guys where we need them to take that type of leap next year. We need, for this defense to be good, for this offense to be good, we need someone to take that leap similar to what Alec Boehm did. Over the weekend, I was calling it the Boehmian leap. So who do we want to see take that Boehmian leap on this Eagles team? So we'll get into that after the break. And we'll get back to the fun question of, if you could look at the Philadelphia Phillies franchise history and you could take one player and add them to this roster, who would it be? We got a lot of text on that matter, so we'll get into that when we get back as well. So we want to hear from you, 610-632-0975. You can answer that question or the one that I'm going to give to Amy about the Eagles. Who needs to take a big leap this season for them to be successful? This is Middays on The Fanatic. We'll be right back. On the Fanatic is brought to you by Service First Heating and Air Conditioning. Get 0% financing for 72 months and a $500 rebate when you purchase a complete heating and cooling system from Service First. Learn more at servicefirst.hvac.com. No Bob Cooney today, finishing his vacation. I'm Bill Colarulo in with Amy Fadul, and as always, Ray Dunn. So I want to get back to the Eagles conversation in a second, but we did start the show with a little fun question. That if you could look back at the entire Philadelphia Phillies franchise history and you could add one player to this current team, who would you add? I said Richie Ashburn in center. Amy said Michael Jack Schmidt at third base, and she'd be okay saying, sorry, Alec Bohm. And Raymond Dunn went with the flying Hawaiian Shane Victorino in center field. We've got Brad Lidge. We got Jason Worth in right field. We even got a Bobby Abreu phone call. And I think a lot more people have checked in on the text line. And if you want to get in on that question, 610-632-0975. You can call or text us. But what do we got on the text line, Ray?
We got another person saying Brad Lidge, which is interesting. And I remember the call earlier. They said that they're taking antacid watching this bullpen operate. I would advise you, save the antacid for something else on this one. But funny for me, the Brad Lidge, because so many people are worried about Alvarado, and for some reason, Alvarado's walk rate's lower than Lidge's was in 08. But moving on to the next texter, we got Pat Burrell in left field.
Pat the Bat.
We just saw Pat the Bat. We'll see him again.
Yes, we did. Hitting coach for the San Francisco Giants. I'll tell you, I'll never forget my first championship parade ever because I was born a week after the NBA Finals win by the Sixers. Still haven't seen one of those. So the 08 parade was my first one, and I still remember seeing Pat the Bat sitting there with his dog during the parade. That was a fun day, Ray.
With the Clydesdales.
And a key member of that locker room, right? Dog was there a lot.
Yes, he was.
The dog was there, if I remember that correctly. That was,
You are correct.
And Pat was a key member of that locker room. He
Of
was
course.
really the leader
Captain
of that
vibes.
team. Yep.
yeah, a lot of vibes there. Pat Burrell comes up again for Bill from Utah, but also wanted to go to the middle infield. He doesn't care about your Bryson Stott or your Trey Turner. He wants either Utley or Rollins on this team, and they'll figure it out somehow.
Just one of the two?
One of the
One
two.
of those two. All right.
See, now look, an answer like that, I love Chase Utley. I love Jimmy Rollins. But for me, that is not the need on this team. In fact, I mentioned earlier, we have too many shortstops on the team right now because Edmundo Sosa is hitting so well. So you add Utley or Rollins, does that move the needle for this baseball team? I don't think it does because you already have a good second baseman and a good shortstop. Nothing against those two Philly legends.
I mean, they are Philly legends, borderline Hall of Fame type of players. So I get it, but you're jettisoning guys that are still producing.
That's why I'm going outfield. That's why I'm going outfield.
It's hard to say no to them, though.
Love you, Bryson, but
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard to
Chase-
say no. It's
yeah.
hard to say no to Chase.
Chase
Utley.
walks out of that time machine.
Yeah.
Bryson, it's been a pleasure.
2008 Chase, 2000, 2007, 2008, 2009 Jimmy Rollins. Come on down.
We also got Dick Allen, right field.
Yeah, a lot of right field chatter. I think that, and then I think one of the callers said he would move Castellanos over, and I think Bill and I were like, or you just move on from him.
Yeah, he's been frustrating. He has been frustrating. But listen, the person who said Rollins and Utley, well, the reason we're saying maybe not to that is because of Bryson Stott, because of how much Bryson Stott has continued to improve since he got with the Phillies. Now that leads me to my Eagles point that we were getting into, is who on this Eagles team do we need to see take that type of leap? Because you're seeing Bryson Stott get better and better as a player. You're seeing Alec Bohm get better and better. You obviously saw Ranger Suarez. I know he has that one rough outing, but he looks like he went from a good pitcher to potentially a great one, a Cy Young potential pitcher right now. So when we look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, and look, the defense is going to be harder. So let's start with the offense then. Is there anyone on the offense that we need to see take that type of leap? Because when I look at A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley and even Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, I don't know if you can expect those guys to take massive leaps. They're already playing at a very high level.
I think there's two answers, and they have a very good connection. And it's not maybe a leap or it's a rewind for Jalen Hurts. I need him to go back to 2022 Jalen Hurts, but it's Cam Jurgens for me. I need him to become the stalwart. He's not going to become Jason Kelce. I understand that, but I need him to become Jason Kelce-esque. That connection has to be solid. He has to be able to do everything that Jason Kelce did for this Eagles team, as far as reading through everything, relaying everything to his line and to his quarterback. He needs to be that guy. It's a lot to ask in his first year filling in for a future Hall of Famer. But if you look at the offense, it's that connection there. It's Jalen Hurts throwing it back to 2022. That's what I need to see, and I need to see Cam Jurgens take that leap and embrace the guy that they want him to be and that Jason Kelce thinks he is by handpicking him.
Yeah, and I'm really happy you said Jalen Hurts. It's not necessarily a leap as much as it is a rewind because we have seen him do it before. And you look at Jalen Hurts' numbers from last season, and for me, the major difference was the turnovers. I mean, if he cleans up the turnovers from last season, you may be dealing with a completely different outcome to the way this season went. And it wasn't just Jalen. It's also the fact that the defense didn't get as many takeaways. Because you look at the 2022 team, they did a really good job of protecting the football on offense and taking it away on defense. They were a +8 turnover differential that year. You look at last year, when their turnovers increase and their takeaways decrease, they went to a -10 turnover differential. So you're looking at a difference of 18 turnovers. That is massive in the NFL. So hopefully Jalen Hurts can clean that up. But one thing that I noticed with Jalen Hurts is a lot of people were frustrated, obviously, by the interceptions. But the fumbles were a big deal. And you go back to 2022, he actually put the ball on the ground just as many times. It's just he was luckier, and they recovered
him more.
So he needs to clean that up because even in his MVP-type season, he put the ball on the ground 9 times. It's just that they recovered 7 of them, whereas this year they only recovered 4. So that's a great answer. Cam Jurgens is a great answer. And then we also got to talk about right guard. Is it Tyler Steen that takes the leap? Is it maybe Matt Hennessy, Temple Proud, Ray? Temple Proud? Is it him? If Tyler Steen's not the answer, is it Hennessy that becomes the right guard? But whoever it is there, they have to take a leap. Not necessarily need to be a Pro Bowler at that position because you have so many other good pieces. But for this offensive line to get back to being dominant, you're right. You need Jurgens, and you also need the right guard.
I mean, you have to have that line be what that line has been made to do and made to become. The Jeff Stoutland formed line that those guys come through, and it's the most, well-respected line in all of football over the number of years that we've seen. The main reason being Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson, but you've seen everybody else come up to that level because that's where they set the standard. They set the standard right at that highest level. So you need to have everybody. I think Steen is the guy. If he doesn't, he will. It's his job to lose, I should say. Doesn't mean that someone can't come in and take it, but I don't see that happening in camp unless something goes horribly wrong. I don't understand a scenario where we start game 1 and it's not Tyler Steen. But I think that's the line as a whole. But going back to Jalen Hurts, the confidence there to me just wasn't where it was at, and that's why he had so many of those turnovers. There wasn't a lot of reading through his progressions with a lot of confidence. And maybe that's, married to the offensive coordinator. Maybe it's married to just him trying to do too much. I have no idea. But it's a problem. You have to have that addressed as a whole. I do think it's Steen. I don't think there's any question. But if it is him, then you need to see him come up to the level of everybody else on that line because that line does have a different standard than everybody else.
Yeah, and I said earlier, you really can't ask A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith to take a leap. They're already playing at a high level.
They're setting records.
But you look at that third wide receiver position, and there's still a major question mark there. We're not sure who it's even going to be. And I mentioned OTAs and some of the people who weren't there. When Devontae Smith wasn't there on Wednesday, your starting outside wide receiver opposite A.J. Brown was Joseph Nagata, just showing the lack of depth they have at that position. Now, starting in the slot was Paris Campbell, and I think they are hopeful that Paris Campbell can be the answer there. But what are you hoping to see from that wide receiver 3 position this year?
A different player? There's guys out there. There are people available. I feel like that answer is not on the roster right now. I don't know that it is.
So I thought when you said a different player, you were referring to anybody but Quez Watkins because
True.
funny story coming out of Pittsburgh. Quez Watkins said, and this is a quote, "For me, when I saw they traded Deontay Johnson, it was a great opportunity to potentially be a number 2. It's a good opportunity for me to compete for that spot." Do you remember when Quez Watkins said that Jalen Hurts told him, the phone's ringing, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to answer it. I've been ready." Yeah, still waiting for Quez Watkins to show us something on the field.
We loved his speed. That's all we liked.
Yeah, we loved, sure. And loved that every preseason someone would try to talk us into it. This is the year of Quez.
You got it. He's our guy. He's going to be the number 3 guy right behind these two.
Right. Yeah,
Still
absolutely.
looking at- Yeah, if he's the third horse in the race, to say he's been swallowed up by the field is an understatement. He's not it.
No, Quez Watkins was never it, and the whole argument about the speed always frustrated me because in 2021, before A.J. Brown got here, you saw Quez Watkins average 15 yards a catch. And then in 2022, when he was going to take more of that third wide receiver role, you knew his production would drop in terms of targets and receptions when you have a guy like A.J., but what you wouldn't have expected is that his yards per reception went from 15 down to 10.7, and then last year down to 9.5. So I was so sick and tired of hearing about, his speed, he takes the lid off of a defense. Well, if that was the case, you wouldn't see his average yards per reception drop so significantly. But let's hope maybe Paris Campbell can be the answer. Last year in New York with terrible quarterback play, he didn't do anything. 20 catches, 100 yards. But you go back 2 years to his time in Indianapolis, he had 60 catches, over 620 yards. I would take that level of production from our third wide receiver. But and I had this conversation this morning. I appeared on another show, and they were talking about Saquon Barkley, and they still couldn't believe that the Eagles gave him as much money as they did. And the way I looked at it was a smart move by them because a lot of people wanted to see them go out and upgrade the third wide receiver, maybe in free agency. But when a guy like Darnell Mooney is getting paid 3 years, $39 million by the Atlanta Falcons, and you're telling me you can get Saquon Barkley for less money than what they had to pay Darnell Mooney, it made sense to me. Is basically Howie Roseman's like, you know what? We're not going to look at it from position. We're going to say we'll pay a weapon more.
Third weapon.
Yeah, we'll pay a third weapon before we're going to go ahead and overpay for a third wide receiver. So we'll see what they do at that position. John Ross isn't the answer, Amy. I know some people got excited. I don't even think he makes the team. They signed him last week, but offense should be okay, though. You feel pretty good.
Again, with the speed. We love speed. John Ross, he's fast.
Well, you can't coach speed. We've heard that one before.
No, you can coach catching, though.
Yeah, and just being a good wide receiver. Quick question. You guys think when Quez comes back, we get the tribute video?
I mean, videos are probably a strong word. Vignette, maybe? Is it a vignette?
A nice little
still shot?
Look up at the video board and thank you, Quez.
And then it's gone. No, there's no chance.
No.
There's no chance. 0.0. But I like the idea of it.
So, no chance, but I would have thought that there was no chance that Saturday, May 25th, that we would be fielding calls here on The Fanatic from people saying that Kenny Pickett should be the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. Amy, we were getting calls on Saturday from people who were dead serious saying Kenny Pickett should be the starter. Jalen Hurts is the weak link on that offense. If this team doesn't come out to a hot start, which is very possible with all the changes at coordinator, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to handle those fans who are calling for Kenny Pickett.
There's nothing we love more. There was a couple of weeks ago that we were talking about what is like a definitive Philadelphia thing. What is something that we always do here? And
how's everyone doing?
Yeah.
That's why backup quarterback.
We love the backup quarterback battle. We love it, and there's one reason that we've been rewarded for it, but it's not just that. We've always loved the backup quarterback battle. If the season does not start out well, and they for some reason decide to. It will not continue to go well if Kenny Pickett is your quarterback. There's just no doubt in my mind. I know he looked great in the OTA in shells and shorts with no one playing.
And I'm glad you said OTA. Literally, not OTAs. The media was there for one practice. One practice.
One organized team activity.
And they said that Kenny Pickett looked good. Now, I've talked to people who were there who said, yeah, you know who else looked sharp? Kenny Gainwell probably looked sharper than Saquon because he's learning a new offense, but you don't hear anyone saying Kenny Gainwell should be the damn starting running back.
Kenny Pickett is going to look good. I mean, he's played in the NFL. He's not a complete, sack of footballs. He knows what he's doing. He's not a good. Just look at. All right, whatever. People might go back to his Pittsburgh day and be like, "Oh, yeah, well, it's because of the offense, or they weren't very creative," which is true. It's not a very creative offense out there in Pittsburgh, but he didn't do anything. There's no energy or excitement surrounding Kenny Pickett. He is as vanilla quarterback as they come, and maybe that's what people want. Maybe they just want to go ahead and have just a guy who's going to stand back there, do his check downs, and call it a day.
Yeah, so we're asking the question. Right now we're focused on the offense. Who do we want to see take a leap forward? We'll get into defense in a second, but Mitch from East Windsor wants to check in on that conversation. What's up, Mitch?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Amy, Bill, thanks for the call.
No problem.
I was a Greg Zilinski fan. Underachieved like Frank Howard and them, but he was a good player.
So that's who you would add? That's who you'd add to the
Greg
roster?
Zilinski.
All right,
Yeah, Greg Zilinski.
cool. Love it.
Yeah. Smith get improved big time, stick out for those Georgia Bulldogs. And I'm hoping, I'm Pac-12 guy, Pac-2 now. Tanner McGee wins second starting backup quarterback to Jalen Hurts. Because if you see what Pittsburgh did, they brought in not one, but two. One quarterback, he's a Hall of Famer, they had down here, and one quarterback that hasn't even really proven himself to be a full-time starter today, Josh Lucas. Jury's still out. So what does that tell you about Pickett?
Yeah, appreciate the call, Mitch. And look, Tanner McKee, Kenny Pickett, talking about backup quarterbacks, May 28th.
That's where we're at.
That's where we are in Philly.
His point, though, he's talking about how Pittsburgh tried to they didn't think anything about Kenny Pickett because they brought in Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. So.
Now, I will say this about Kenny Pickett. I don't think that we should be discussing Kenny Pickett as competing with Jalen Hurts or ever. But the point of a backup quarterback is that if your starter goes down, that they are capable of being able to come in for a short period of time and maybe win a game or two. That's all you would want from Kenny Pickett. If Jalen Hurts, God forbid, is out for an extended period of time, the season's over, in my opinion. What happened in 2017, where Nick Foles came in and saved the day, is the exception, not the norm. You're never going to see that again, I don't think, where a backup quarterback's going to come in and go on an historic run like Nick Foles did. All you would be asking Kenny Pickett to do is if Jalen Hurts misses a game or two, go back to 2022. He did miss a few games there at the end of the season when he hurt his shoulder. Gardner Minshew came in, didn't play badly, but they weren't able to win any games when Hurts was out. Hurts had to come back a little sooner than he probably wanted to lock up that 1 seed. But all you'd be asking Kenny Pickett to do is to win some games. And Kenny Pickett is capable of that, Amy. I don't think he's capable of being a franchise quarterback in this league, but Kenny Pickett certainly could come in if needed and maybe steal a game. He does have a 14-9 record in his career. He was 7-5 in 22, 7-5 in 23. But by no means should we be talking about Kenny Pickett as a potential starter here.
I mean, we can talk about it because it's funny to laugh at, but I mean, we're not actually going to talk about it, right? I mean, Kenny Pickett, just put anybody back there. You have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Okay, Ray, go ahead and throw to those guys. Good luck. I think it would be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try. I mean, I wouldn't put myself out there, but
I don't know.
I appreciate you.
You've got a good offensive line. You got Saquon Barkley. I believe in you. You could win a game.
Yeah, I've got intangibles. Maybe.
You think you could complete
I don't have
locker
tangibles.
room guy.
I
Do
don't
you
have
think you
tangibles.
could complete a pass
We
in
had
an
this
NFL game?
we had this conversation off the air. I think maybe a month or so ago, and I mean, if I just immediately got the ball and just threw it out like a 50-50 ball, maybe. Other than that, no. There's no shot.
Yeah, it's tough. It is. It's tough, too, because you don't realize how hard it is to see over that line. Those are big guys in front of you.
As someone that realizes a lot of his athletic limitations, I do realize how hard it is because I don't think it would go I don't think it'd go well for me. Forget the NFL. Put me in lower levels of football, and I'm not going to start demeaning levels of football. But if you put me in lower levels of football, I still don't know. It's all going to be I get the ball immediately, just throw it up in the air. And
Yeah.
if my receiver makes a play, then I get to say I completed a pass.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Kenny Pickett's a serviceable quarterback. He's exactly what you want out of a backup, a guy that can come in. But I don't know that any world where you think that he's actually going to be. I don't think in Kenny Pickett's mind that he's thinking he's going to vie for the starting position. That's not why you sign here.
No way.
You
No
know
way.
who their starting quarterback is. You go here because you want to be part of a winning team and help a team that you think has potential to win the Super Bowl. There's no one right now on the Eagles team, including the man himself, that thinks he's competing for the starting quarterback position. So to talk about Kenny Pickett starting over Jalen Hurts is almost as funny as calling an umpire 120.
yeah, almost as funny.
Almost.
Almost as funny. So we're going to continue this conversation because Amy and I just addressed the offense and certain players on the offensive side of the football that we need to see take that leap, similar to the leaps you're seeing from some of these Phillies players that have made them one of the best teams, if not the best team in Major League Baseball. So when we get back, though, we're going to switch over to the defense because there are a lot of players on the defensive side of the football that need to take that leap. The ceiling is high this year. This defense could be very good, but hope is not a plan. But we'll talk about what players we need to see take that leap on the defensive side of the football. And if you want to get in, 610-632-0975, you can call or you can text. This is Middays. We'll be right back. No Bob Cooney today. You get Bill Colarulo and Amy Fadul. Bob will be back tomorrow. Hopefully, we'll be talking about a Phillies win tomorrow on the station after back-to-back losses. And we're trying not to overreact, although I did say I had an overreaction this morning that I brought up. And that was to keep Edmundo Sosa in this lineup even when Trey Turner comes back. We talked about maybe moving Turner to outfield. He does have 45 games there. But I got shut down very quickly by Amy and Ray on that.
I'm sorry.
I don't even know if I got to speak on that one. Amy just did the shutting of the down.
I'm sorry. Ray, do you want to weigh in on moving Trey?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to shut it down. Yeah, no, I'm not doing it.
I'm
not
sorry.
doing it. 2016 was the 45 games, and I think it was center field. He was not good. Not good at center field.
No.
So the YouTubers can see, but the radio can't. When I said it, the look I got from Amy, I knew she was going to shut it down real quickly.
Apologies. And the thing is, it comes from a good place. The good place being keeping Edmundo Sosa on the field. Here's a guy in the 63 plate appearances since Trey Turner went down. He's batting over 350. He's got 4 triples, 4 doubles, home runs aplenty. He's doing everything you could ask for him. But he's just caught in a numbers game, and you can't figure it out. No, he's not going to play in the outfield. He is an infielder. That's what he does. He's a shortstop. And if anything, I think I talked to you about I would switch Bryson Stott and Trey Turner. But that doesn't remedy the fact that you would have Edmundo Sosa not as a regular in your lineup.
Yeah, it is a good problem to have, though, that we're talking about it. But so if you want to get in on that, we'll still talk about that. What do you want to do with Turner and Sosa when Turner comes back? 610-632-0975. You can call or you can text us. We were also having a little fun with the Phillies, saying if you could add a former Philly to this current roster, who would you add? And we'll get back to that in a second as well. But before the break, we were talking about the Eagles. And specifically, we're looking at this Eagles defense. And I asked Amy, can you name any sure things on the defensive side of the football? Because we keep looking at question marks, but what are the sure things? And really, the only 2 names we could come up with were, well, Jalen Carter and Darius Slay. And I'm not even sure that you could say both of them are sure things. Darius Slay's 33. Jalen Carter, second-year player. Can he make that leap now that he's going to be getting a lot of attention from opposing offenses? So I want to ask you, because we did look at the offense as well and say, hey, what players do we want to take a leap this year? And you look at this Phillies team, the reason why they're in the position they are is they have had players take that leap. Ranger Suarez went from a good pitcher to potentially a great one, potentially a Cy Young finalist. You saw leaps from Alec Boehm. You've seen leaps from Bryson Stott. Well, when you look at that defense, Amy, there's a lot of players.
Yeah.
They need to take a leap.
No wrong answers, I feel like, in this one. I mean,
and it's not even a want. It's really a need for this team. They need these players to take leaps.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of hope in the fact that it's set up better with Vic Fangio, and there's going to be players who can take that leap. But you have a lot of guys that need to answer the bell. It's not even taking a leap. You need to answer the bell. There's players that you need to replace. There's players that you need to replace the production of. And there's players that need to step back up in ways that we have not seen with any kind of consistency. There's just too many questions right now. And we were talking about it. You mentioned you're talking about guys that are sure things. There's guys that you don't have questions about. And even then you're like, oh, I got a still little question about Jalen Carter. You hope, you think, it looks like it. I don't have as many questions about him, but there is still maybe something in the back of your mind. But yeah, it's hard to choose just one player on defense that needs take a leap. How about any kind of leap for Nakobe Dean? How about any kind of leap?
Yeah, we need to see Nakobe.
Not just steps. I need just giant monster strides.
And the problem with Nakobe Dean is his rookie season only plays 34 snaps. And the Eagles made the decision in the offseason last year of we're going to anoint Nakobe Dean. He's our linebacker in the middle. He's going to wear the green dot. We're going to put all of our hopes and dreams at linebacker on Nakobe Dean. And once again, he just couldn't stay healthy. Only played 180 snaps last year. But even when he was healthy, Amy, even when he was on the field, I'm still not sure what we have in Nakobe Dean. Can he be the alpha that we saw in the middle with the Georgia Bulldog defense that was one of the best defenses we've ever seen in NCAA history? Can he be that guy at the pro level? I don't think anyone can answer that question yet.
No, and that's why he's one of the many that you could choose as far as to take that leap. You want him to become the player that you drafted with the expectation of being that solid middle linebacker. That's the quarterback on the defense. That's what you anointed him. That's what you want him to do. It's not even about health for me. Even when he's healthy out there, he doesn't look as good as he should. And I think that's where some of the questions come in. Can he even be that guy? What do you have in Nakobe Dean? Because right now he's not showing what he was at Georgia. And I don't think it's just injuries. And I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Maybe it's been scheme. Maybe it's been confidence. Maybe it's been injuries. Maybe it's been all three of those things. But if you're asking me if I just had to pick one, I need one guy to make a giant leap forward. Nakobe Dean's my guy because you've tagged him as your middle linebacker, your quarterback on the defense. And right now that defense is sinking.
And you know who can really help Nakobe Dean take that leap? Is another guy we need to take a leap, and that's Jordan Davis. Because how much easier of a job would he have at linebacker if not only Jalen Carter is doing his thing in the middle of that defensive line, but if Jordan Davis can live up to being that first-round potential? We've seen flashes of it. But if Jordan Davis can take a leap forward and he can be an extremely good defensive tackle, well, now your job at linebacker just got a hell of a lot easier. And Jordan Davis, this is an important year for him because he was drafted in the first round, which means it comes with a fifth-year option. But that fifth-year option has to be exercised next summer. So it's all going to be based off of what Jordan Davis does this season. So this is a big deal for him. Really, you could make the argument every Georgia Bulldog needs to take a leap this year. Every one of them.
Yeah.
You got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. You mentioned Nakobe Dean. You've heard me talk about Keely Ringo on the outside. But there's another one on that defensive line, and that's Nolan Smith.
Nolan Smith. You could go across. That's why we said there's no wrong answers for this one. Because then you can go into the secondary and have everybody else step up there. Linebacking has long been since an issue for the Eagles when you think about how they've really struggled there as a whole. You're going back 20 years until you probably didn't have some questions in that linebacking core with Sheldon and Lito Shepard. I mean, this is a long time ago with those guys, right? In the cornerback situation. I feel like they're always asking those questions. But I think that Jordan Davis is a good one in the fact that he provides that extra front pressure. And I know against the run he's been better at times, but you said it. He's shown flashes. And at this point, they're not even consistent flashes. It's not even every other game. Sometimes it's just every other down. And he gets very worn out. He gets very winded out there. I know Bob's mentioned it a couple times. I think it was the Bills game that he got beat and he just kind of laid there. And you're thinking, that's not good. It's kind of symptomatic of the entire defense at that point because that was the turning point in the season. But I think that there's a lot of potential there, and you've seen it, and his ability to be that run stopper in the middle just from his size and the way that he operates, his footwork. He's shown it. I just don't know that he can show it for an entire season, and that's maybe why they're all options to take a big, giant leap.
Yeah, there are. And we just mentioned Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis at D tackle. Another guy in Milton Williams. And Milton Williams is another guy that this is an extremely important year for him. He's entering the true final year of his contract because he was drafted in the third round. There is no fifth-year option. This is the final year of his deal. But I look at it as you need those three guys right there in the middle. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams. If those three guys can take a big leap forward, it can have that ripple effect throughout the whole defense. If they're able to take on the blockers when the runs come and to free up your linebackers to make the play, if they're able to generate interior pressure on the quarterback on passing downs, that can really disrupt the opposing team's offenses and have that ripple effect to help out your secondary because, look, we got to talk about them as well because the safety position is another one where, hey, we probably need guys to take a leap forward. Not only corner, but safety. So this is a tough thing to do is to look at this Eagles team and be so confident, but at the same time have all of these questions because I am confident. I did my W's and L's, Amy. I got 13 wins for the Eagles. And then I take a step back and I start looking at all these positions on defense, and it's like, okay, if this guy can do this, and if this guy can do that, and if this guy can do that. Well, that's a lot of ifs.
Yeah, you just named like 4 people. Like, if they can do this, 4 people to take a giant leap in order to get your defense back to where you need it to be in order to be a successful team, a 13-win team. That's a lot. That's a lot. And the thing is, I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation, mind you. These are guys that are drafted in positions for the Eagles to expect this from them. This is not like you drafted a guy in the 5th or 6th round and thought, hey, he's got to be our starter and our shutdown guy and play at a Pro Bowl level. No, you were drafted in the 1st round, high 1st round. And there's a reason for that. Some in cases traded up to draft. So, like, what are we doing here? This is why they got you. This is what you're supposed to do here. This is what the expectation is when you're drafted with that. And it's not because they just thought it would be something fun to do. The expectation is there because you've shown the ability to do that. Now it's about unlocking it.
And you talk about expectations. I've come to expect that our Fanatic Deal of the Week is always going to be good. Because
that's a smooth segue right there.
Yeah, that's a segue. It always is, Amy. And the Fanatic Deal of the Week this week, you guys got to check this one out. For a limited time only, get a same-day ride and water park ticket to Maurice Piers for just $70. That's a $50 saving per ticket for unlimited rides on 3 piers and both water parks for a whole day. Get this exclusive offer while supplies last at 975thefanatic.com/deals. I love Maurice Pier. Grew up going down there.
Who doesn't love Maurice Pier?
It's the best. It is the best. So when we get back, though, I want to continue the Eagles conversation about what players we need to see take a leap. I want to hear from you. You can call or text 610-632-0975. But I also want to talk to Amy about some of the offensive statistic categories where there are odds out on how many passing yards Jalen Hurts is going to have, how many receiving yards Devontae and AJ are going to have, how many rushing yards Saquon Barkley is going to have. And some of these got me surprised, but one of them has me a little bit concerned, like Vegas knows something that we don't know. We'll get into that when we get back.
Another
Welcome back in the middays, everybody. This is Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul today. So a little bit concerned. Amy and I have spent the last hour talking about this Philadelphia Eagles team and some of the issues we have with the team, mainly on the defensive side of the football, and players we want to see take a leap forward this year. And during the break, I'm reading some articles on my phone, and I come across Bleacher Report put out a list of the most overrated player at each position. And they named the most overrated linebacker. And it's Devin White of your Philadelphia Eagles.
Who makes these lists?
I don't know. I think this was Alex K. made this list.
All right, Alex.
But what she cites, or he cites, I don't know with the name Alex, but says White tends to be a liability in coverage. He allowed a completion rate of 75% or higher in each of his first 4 seasons. He misses a lot of tackles. And according to Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times, he rubbed coaches and teammates the wrong way with his attitude.
Well, he was benched.
He was benched. And this is a good point. It says, look, the league took notice of that, and that's the reason he only signed a 1-year, $4 million contract with the Eagles in free agency. So we will see. Look, it's a prove-it year for Devin White. I'm not feeling great about the linebacker position. That's an understatement. But they are putting a lot of hopes in not only Devin White, but Nakobe Dean. And OTAs last week, Amy, Nakobe Dean's still not healthy from his foot. And the other starting linebacker next to Devin White was Zach Baun, who's barely played that position in his career.
But if you remember, that was one name.
That Fangio said?
Yes. He
I
was
know.
very excited. There were people that listened to the Vic Fangio press conference and just thought, they Googled him. Who is Zach Baun? What's his deal? Where'd that guy come from?
The first name he said.
The first one. Well, we had Dave Zingaro on the best show ever, me and Tyrone. I was filling in for Ricky Bowe. And I asked Zingaro about it, and he said, yeah, it could have just been Vic Fangio was like looking for names and wasn't prepared for the question. No. This is their plan. This is their plan that they had him as the first player at linebacker with Nakobe Dean on the bench. I'm blown away by that.
I love it. I think you're going to see Trotter Jr. more often than not.
Axeman coming back. Well, it's just, I'm excited for the Jeremiah Trotter Jr. pick, as most people here are in Philly, but it is asking a lot of a 5th-round rookie that he's going to step in and be able to lead this defense. Because, look, I don't think anyone will be happy if this season doesn't result in an NFC Championship appearance.
I mean, yeah.
We haven't really got into that discussion. We did the W's and L's, but what we would consider to be a successful season. And I keep going back to the fact that history will tell you the Philadelphia Eagles have never been to a championship game when they didn't have a top 10 defense, ever. So we always think, well, the offense is so good that it'll carry the way. They've never been there when they didn't have a top 10 defense. And can you really rely on a 5th-round rookie to be your middle linebacker on a defense that needs to be a Super Bowl contending defense?
Do you have to? That's the question. I don't know if you need to or you have to, but you might. That might be how the cookie crumbles in this one. There's always a question about the linebacking core with the Eagles. Always a question.
Yes.
For 20 years, there's been a question about the linebacking core as a whole. You've seen bits and pieces, and you thought, oh, that guy, he's okay in this. No, it's just, and it's been made up for the lack of solid linebacking core by a really good defensive front or a really good secondary. Right now, the questions are plenty all around: defensive front, linebackers, secondary. So that begs the question: can this be a top 10 defense as it's currently constructed? You have no idea. You have no idea. It wasn't a top 10 defense last year by any stretch. It was a bottom 3 defense.
Yeah, it was a bottom 3 defense. They gave up 25.2 points per game. Now, what's crazy is you may say, well, it's going to be hard for them to go from 30 back into the top 10, but yet somehow they went from being top 10 down to 30 from one year
one
to the
one's
next.
easier than another.
So I guess it could happen. But before the break, I said that Vegas put out their odds on some of the offensive statistical categories. And I'm concerned about one of these, Amy. Tell me what I'm missing here, okay? Jalen Hurts in 2022, he played 15 games. and he threw for over 3,700 yards. Last year, he played all 17 games. He threw for over 3,800 yards, right? On an offense where you thought, well, things looked off. He still threw for over 3,800 yards. Well, now they bring in Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. They still have all of these weapons. They've added Saquon Barkley, who should also be a threat in the pass-catching category out of the backfield. Jalen Hurts, over-under for passing yards, 3,600.
It's funny. I remember seeing that, and I thought, why is it that number, considering what he's done in the previous 2 seasons? And the numbers, as far as passing yards, as you mentioned, very similar, right? Give or take, 3,700, 3,800 and change. Why are they lower? Is it because that they are going to rely more on the running game? Maybe. Nothing about this Eagles team has said in the last 2 years that they're really reliant upon that running game. Do they run the ball? Yes. Do they run the ball at the expense of their quarterback? No, they don't. So I don't know why it's lower than what his average is. You'd have to go back to 2021 for him to be under 3,500 yards as far as passing total yards. So I don't know. That's a strange number to me.
Yeah, it got me a little bit nervous.
Maybe they're just like thinking that the offense won't be able to move the ball. I mean, you have A.J. Brown and Devontae. I don't know.
Yeah, and then I went and looked. Well, okay, what are they saying for A.J. and Devontae? They have A.J. Brown, 1,300 yards. He has the 4th best odds to lead the NFL in receiving. They got Devontae Smith's over-under at 1,050 yards. So basically they're saying you're going to have 2,000-yard receivers, and he's not going to surpass 3,600, which he's done the last 2 years. It just made me nervous that maybe they think something we don't. But then at the same time, Saquon Barkley, 1,125 in rushing is where they have him. 3rd best odds to lead the NFL in rushing.
So there you go. They think they're going to run the ball a lot more.
They only have him behind Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. So, yeah, it just made me concerned that maybe they're not thinking Jalen's going to have a big year, but we will see. We will see. But when we get back, I want to get to some of your phone calls. I see people on the line who want to talk about Jeremiah Trotter and some Eagles, but we played the game earlier in the show where we asked you to look at the Philadelphia Phillies in franchise history and add any player to this current roster. We got some great answers. Brad Lidge. I said Richie Ashburn. Amy said Michael Jack Schmidt. Ray went with the Flying Hawaiian Shane Victorino. I want to play the same game with the Philadelphia Eagles, Amy. So when we come back, we're going to talk about a player from franchise history that we would want to add to this current Eagles team. And we'll also continue to talk about some of these year 2, year 3 players that we need to see take that big leap so that hopefully we're all celebrating at the end of next season, not figuring out what the hell went wrong like we were this year. So we will be right back. This is Middays. Don't go anywhere. 1 o'clock hour on The Fanatic is brought to you by Ferguson HVAC Lyon Conklin. Attention HVAC contractors for equipment, parts, and supplies for every heating and cooling job. Visit one of Ferguson's counter locations in Bensalem, King of Prussia, Pennsauken, or Westchester. I'm Bill Colarulo filling in for Bob Cooney today, along with Amy Fadul and Ray Dunn. And we had some fun earlier in the show. We were looking at this current Phillies roster and saying, hey, if you could take anybody from franchise history and add them to this Phillies team, who would you add? And we were just talking to a former Philly himself, Ricky Bottalico, during the break. And his idea would be an interesting one, Amy. So Ricky Bo said he would move Bryce Harper to right field, and he'd bring back Ryan Howard.
Big piece.
Could you imagine Ryan Howard in this lineup?
That's a power bat if I ever saw one. But we've been very specific with people. Sometimes they're like Brad Lidge, but it's 2008 Brad Lidge. So you're looking at like 06, 07, 08. You can take. I would probably say 06. I went MVP, but I'll take any of them.
Yeah, I mean,
Ryan
I'd take
Howard.
any of them.
I'll take any early Ryan Howard. I won't take.
That's a popular text line one. That's
Because
a
then
lot of people on that
it
one.
solves your right field issue, which has been a popular one. People saying right fielders, and then it gives you a real big power bat. I mean, so there was the East-West game. It was a tribute to the Negro Leagues. It was over the weekend, and Ryan Howard was playing for the team.
I saw the highlight.
When you saw the swing and the little hitch, Ray, and then he did the bat drop.
The little rock back, dropping the bat.
They
Oh,
just
It
smiled,
it took you right back.
It was so great.
He went out and they won. His team won. He was the player of the game for his team. They won 5-4. Just seeing it. The swing. He's 44 years young. Still had the swing. Still had that little hip, little twitch and little hop and drop the bat. And I was like, it just took you right back. It brought a smile to my face.
Yeah, me too. It was great, that video. He
Also,
looks
a
like
good
he's-
vibes guy, too, for this new clubhouse.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
I said,
A vibesman.
I said to Ricky Bo that I went with Richie Ashburn because I wanted a center. I thought about Lenny Dykstra, but I don't want him in this locker room. I don't want Lenny in the locker room. Ray, did we get any other texts before we switch over to this Eagles?
So the one that was the most prominent was about Ryan Howard. We got so many people begging to bring Ryan Howard back. There was about 4 texts, I think, in a row trying to get Ryan Howard here. Then we got Gary Maddox coming up a couple of times as well.
There you go.
That's a good one.
Good coverage.
Yeah, but you'd have to put, obviously, for Howard to come back, you'd have to move Bryce to the outfield. But, man, that really fixes your problem of not having a bat in the outfield, doesn't it?
Yeah. Big time.
Just a bit. Just
So,
a bit.
wait, do we try to talk Howard into coming back? He did look good in that game.
I mean,
Yeah.
He looks like he still had the swing.
drop him a line.
I'm sure he would have appreciated the DH as much as the next guy of anybody.
I had the thought while we were doing the all-time draft, and I think I responded to one of the YouTube chats in there. Imagine the NL having the DH when you had Tomey and Howard in the organization.
Oh, my goodness.
Ridiculous.
How wonderful that would have been.
Ridiculous.
Could you imagine?
Yes, I could, and it would have been a glorious. I mean, we had some glorious years. Don't get me wrong.
We did, but that would have been incredible to have Tomey and Howard in the lineup together.
High quality.
If only. Speaking of If, I did go see If yesterday with my kids. Pretty good movie. You see that movie, If?
I have not seen it. I've heard it's good.
Pretty good.
Movie that spawned the If idea from Bob.
That's
I did not
correct.
see it.
Yes.
So.
That's correct. That's part of the reason I knew it was out there, because Bob brought it up with our If conversation, which Ray's was to bring it full circle to Ryan Howard if he doesn't tear his Achilles. Wasn't
Yeah.
that one of yours?
Well, yeah, it was it was really if Cliff Lee had just not blown a 4-run lead in Game 2, and they just swept the Cardinals.
We're in a good place. We're in a good
Well, I'm
place.
sorry.
Don't take us to the dark places.
Yeah, let's be positive.
Okay?
I'm sorry.
2011 was fun until it wasn't.
It was fun. Okay, it was a
Okay?
fun
Let's
summer.
just
We're
end
talking
that.
about the summer.
Summer. We're
Fun
talking
summer.
about the summers
I don't-
here.
Keep
Don't
it
take us
positive,
to the
Ray.
dark
Don't
place.
bring
Whoa,
us
whoa,
down.
whoa, whoa, whoa! You brought up what I
Yes,
said.
you did. You
Way
talked
to throw
about the
my words
Achilles.
in my
Come on
face,
now,
and
Ray.
You
you're
talked about the
gaslighting me,
Achilles.
Okay, this is ridiculous.
We're taking joy in seeing Ryan Howard out there. That smile, I enjoyed it. It was fun. End of story.
All right. So let's try to switch to positive, though. And one of the things that we're saying positively is Eagles players that could also take a leap, right? Players that could take a leap. And I think we got a lot of text on players that could take a leap, Ray.
Yeah, we got one from Father Sean checking in, and this goes right to what you guys were talking about. Georgia guys need to take a leap from being Chihuahuas to being real Bulldogs this year.
Ooh,
Wow.
small dog to big dog.
That is true. I mean, if simply the Georgia Bulldogs all take a leap forward, this defense could be elite. I mean, if Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, and Keely Ringo take a massive leap, we're talking about maybe one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I don't even want to go. I don't even need everybody to. I don't need a number 2 defense. I do need a not 28 defense. I need a team that's not going to give up 31 points on average to close out the season. That's what I need. So I love the idea that we need to have 5 players completely, turn the corner and leap forward. Give me 2 taking a giant leap forward. And give me the other ones going from a Chihuahua to like a nice-sized dog, right? Like a mid-sized situation, like a golden retriever. I don't need a Mastiff yet, but I need a decent-sized dog.
I like the analogies.
Right?
I like the analogies.
I need a progression of dog.
I need to see them because there's nothing that frustrates me more than when a team can't get off the field on third down. And they were 31st in the NFL on third down last year. Just get off the damn field. When you have a 3rd and long, get off the field.
Seems so simple.
It really does.
And yet.
So we're going to do the same question when we talk about the Eagles as what former player from Eagles franchise history would we add to this current team? But I do want to go to the phones because Bill from Utah has been holding a while. Wants to say 2 players the Eagles should keep their eye on. What's up, Bill? You're on the Fanatic.
Good. So when the Eagles signed John Ross, man, I was kind of like, dang it, because I really thought that was when we were going to get Hunter Renfrow, man. I would love that guy on an Eagles jersey.
Hunter Renfrow, okay.
Yeah, and Bill, I don't think just because they brought in John Ross that's going to prevent them from adding to the wide receiver room. I still expect them to add to the wide receiver room. John Ross is probably more of a camp body. I'm not expecting him to make the team, but who's another guy you have on the radar?
Okay, if this guy gets dropped, and I saw like a video, a blog, whatever, where he's a potential candidate to get dropped, it's Taysom Hill. If they could bring him in at an affordable price to win a ring, this guy on special teams, punt returns, fullback, tight end, this guy can do it all, man.
Yeah, good call, Bill. My question, though, would be, Amy, we have people calling for Kenny Pickett right now. Could you imagine if they added Taysom Hill? And then the reason I wouldn't like it, Bill, is I love that you're thinking outside the box. But the reason I wouldn't like it is he's such a gadget player. I don't want to bring in a guy where then you're almost forced to take Jalen Hurts off the field so that Taysom Hill can get on the field, especially when Jalen Hurts has that running ability. I don't need to add Taysom Hill to this team.
Well, I think the idea behind Taysom Hill is that he is, a multi-purpose type of guy with return. There's plenty of people that can return punts and kicks. Cooper DeJean comes to mind on that front, and obviously Britton Covey's still here on this roster as well. But it was the same argument when people saw what the Steelers signed Justin Fields for versus what the Eagles signed Kenny Pickett for, and they thought, well, if you're going to match Jalen Hurts' skill set, don't you maybe think about a guy more like Justin Fields than Kenny Pickett? And the answer is no. You think about a quality backup quarterback that can get you through until your quarterback is okay. Yep. That's all. It's not a quarterback competition. It's not open. Now, in Pittsburgh, it might be a quarterback competition between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but it is not here. So I think that's that idea of this kind of gadgety type of guy, or this guy that can be a running quarterback and he can help you out and solve 2 things. It's a fun little thing to talk about, but it's not a realistic. You don't put Taysom Hill on this team and think, what do you want to run the Wildcat once every 105 plays? Like, is that what you have Taysom Hill taking up a roster spot for? No.
I would say no.
Yeah, Donovan would say no as well. So let's play the game. Let's play the game with the Eagles because this could be fun. Let's take a look back at Philadelphia Eagles franchise history, and you can add one player, to the current Eagles roster. So we want to hear from you. You can call or you could just text us your player, 610-632-0975. I'm going to go first because I'm afraid that one of you is going to steal my answer because
there's one correct answer.
I think there's one correct answer. I think there's only one correct answer. Let's see if Amy had who I had. I'm going with Reggie White, Amy.
No, that's incorrect.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad we're going to get Amy's perspective. So I'm going Reggie White, and here's why. Not only is he the Ministry of Defense, but 8 years. What was that, look?
It was Minister of Defense.
What'd I say?
Ministry. We gave him the whole church and everything.
The whole church.
Which I don't hate.
I meant to say minister. Thank you for. I saw Amy look like. I'm like, what did I say?
But I was like, what did he say?
What did I say wrong? Not only was he the Minister of Defense, although you could make the argument
he's the whole church.
He's the whole church.
He's the whole religion.
In his 8 years in Philadelphia, he averaged 15 and a half sacks. You add a player like that to this defense, I don't care who our corners and our safeties are. When you're getting that much pressure on the quarterback, you saw it in 2022 when they got 70 sacks, led the league. They also had the number one pass defense. No coincidence that when those sacks dropped off significantly, they dropped to 31st pass defense. I'm adding Reggie White, and this defense would be lights out. So what's the correct answer, Amy?
Brian Dawkins is the correct answer.
B-Dawk.
That is the correct answer. Brian Dawkins is the correct answer. Solves a lot of things. Leadership in your locker room, check. Oh, you need somebody at safety that's going to be shut down and in the Hall of Fame. Oh, here he is. It's Brian Dawkins. Also, for the fun fact of just seeing that come out of the tunnel again, I'm bringing him back. Just run it all back. Brian Dawkins is the correct answer. Ray?
You both have the two best answers, but you've been talking a little bit today about the junior. I want the senior. If we're going to talk Trotter, bring me back Jeremiah Trotter. And I also feel like I'm filling the Bob void here because the guy is obsessed with linebackers and linebacker play, which makes it hilarious that Bob is subjected every year to talking about linebacker play with the Eagles. I want Jeremiah Trotter back, okay? I love both of your answers. I don't think you go wrong with either one of your answers. But Jeremiah Trotter, come on. If we're talking junior here, the reason we talk up junior so much is because you know just how good senior was. And I am taking Jeremiah Trotter back on this football team.
Man, it's hard to argue. We basically just took all three levels of the defense. I got Reggie White. You got Jeremiah Trotter. And Amy's got Brian Dawkins. All three levels we took care of. We got the line, we got the linebacker, we got the safety. I'm wondering if anyone's out there that would disagree with any of those three picks. Is there a fourth option? So if you're out there and you would add somebody else, 610-632-0975. Send us a text if you can, because I'm curious if there's any other answers. Look, if we go to the offensive side of the football, I guess we could say, hey, bring back Jason Kelce.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That would be the answer.
That would be the correct answer on that front.
Right?
That's just being selfish on our parts.
Yeah, Kelce just come out of retirement because we need a center on offense. But outside of that, look, we've had some good wide receivers. I say some because the Andy Reid era was pretty bare when you look at the wide receivers. Would you bring back a T.O.? You really don't need them. Not when you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Then you look at your running backs. You have Saquon Barkley, as much as I loved B. West. But you don't really need them when you got Saquon.
I mean, B. West is a great choice just because what he is, that weapon, and can be out of the backfield and catch. And you love all that. But as far as a replacement player, when you use the old WAR, is it wins is he that much? Is his WAR that much higher? Yes, he's going to be better than Saquon Barkley because you know exactly what you got from Brian Westbrook. But I don't think that you would jettison Saquon. There's better choices, I should say. And I love me some B. West, but there's some better choices. And certainly, quarterback is a question. You could put in statistically the best quarterback the Eagles have ever had, Donovan McNabb. That could be something.
Say no.
I think some people would say yes.
I love this drop. Number 5 will always
He will
love
always
you.
love you.
I have a very important text.
Is it from Donovan?
It's not from Donovan. No, Donovan doesn't answer my calls anymore.
Is it Bob Cooney?
It's not true that number 5 always loves you. He and I
Not
just
you.
not friends
Not
anymore,
you.
I guess. It is Bob Cooney.
Bob Cooney checking in.
Checking in.
What are you
all
listening
the way
to us
from
on
the
your
Bahamas or Greece or
so
wherever
some
he
boat.
spent these 5 days? Brian Dawkins would also be his choice.
So I picked Reggie White and Amy picked Brian Dawkins, as does Bob, which are really good answers. One of them was mine. Of course it was good. But I think that maybe one of our YouTube viewers has the right answer because it solves 2 positions. Do you know who I'm talking about? That would solve 2 positions of need for this Philadelphia Eagles team?
On the offense?
One on offense, one on defense. Concrete Charlie.
Concrete Charlie. I was going back. So Chuck Bednarik. All
Chuck
right.
Bednarik.
Last two-way player.
Because we would have a linebacker and a center on this
There you
team.
go.
That comes from MBD DBF on YouTube.
Tyrone is telling you now.
Tyrone says no.
No to
not
Concrete
in this
Charlie.
era.
Ask
Not in this era.
Tyrone, who's he taking? What Eagle from franchise history?
He's taking Reggie White as well.
Yeah, I think that's the correct answer, too. I mean, there's a lot of good ones. There is a lot of good ones, but the offense, I think it goes to show, though, that the offense is in such a better position right now than the defense because all of us are taking defensive players.
Well, yeah. Look at the offense. There's not you and I went through it. What question marks do you really have? Like, you want Jalen Hurts to get back to where he was last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's center, right guard, our third wide receiver, our backup tight end. Those are our questions, but not bad questions to have on a team. It's like when we look at this Phillies team and we're debating who should be the fifth starter, or whether or not the 9-hole hitter has enough pop in his bat. That's not bad problems to have. But when you look at the defense, probably too many problems, Amy.
Too many. 99 problems.
99 problems, and unfortunately, Bob Cooney, a linebacker, is one.
Bob also wants me to mention that. He said, I swung and missed here. This is an industry lesson for me. He said Brian Dawkins. He also wanted me to mention that both Amy and Bob took Brian Dawkins. They will be at the Brian Dawkins golf outing next week. And he was like, Ray, you're not as good at this as you think. Because
that would have
both
been a
of them
good
went
opportunity.
Dawkins. Yeah, it would have been a great time to plug it.
Come out next Monday.
Yeah.
We will be at Brian Dawkins and Westchester at Penn Oaks.
Penn Oaks, yeah. So that's bad by me. Poor producer job. I will figure it out. I'll regather this evening and try and be better tomorrow.
So, yes. Thank you for checking in, Bob. We appreciate you listening. We're looking forward to you being back on the airwaves tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed your vacation. Well, while we're on this topic, let me ask you guys this then. This one may be a tough one, Amy. If you could have any quarterback from Philadelphia Eagles franchise history on this current roster right now, which QB you going with?
I just answered it. It's Donovan McNabb for me.
You too, Ray?
This is tough. You know what? I'm putting my faith back in Hurts. You know what? I think we're going to see close to the 2022 version of it.
I am with Ray here. I'm a big fan of Jalen Hurts. I think when it's all said and done, Jalen Hurts will go down as the greatest quarterback in franchise history.
Now, here's my caveat for my age, because everyone's going to immediately go with that one. I did not see live Randall Cunningham.
Right, yeah, I'm with
I
you.
would be very curious to know Randall Cunningham with someone that cares about offense and legitimately all these weapons right now.
And he was the ultimate weapon.
So I would be intrigued at least with that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Randall Cunningham. Huh.
Yeah, that would be fun to see.
But look at the quarterback. Look at the wide receivers that Donovan McNabb had, aside from T.O. for the 1 year. Fresh James Thrash. No offense, James, if you're listening.
No.
Todd Pinkston.
I mean, you said that out loud.
My goodness. Well, that's why when there was some chatter, I lost my mind on the air one weekend here because there was some chatter about how the Eagles should consider trading A.J. Brown. Do you remember that whole ridiculous conversation in the offseason?
I think people got a little salty with him last year, which I thought was very strange in itself.
And it was like, do you remember what we used to have here at our wide receiver position? So we're going to continue this conversation. Want to continue to hear from you about if you could add any Philadelphia Eagle from franchise history to this team, who would you add? You can call or you can text 610-632-0975. But I don't want to finish this show without talking about the great Bill Walton. Bill Walton passed away yesterday. Unfortunately, Ray told me on the air. But it had me thinking because Bill Walton, one of the greatest college basketball players to ever play the game, and then turned into a wonderful broadcaster. So what I want to talk to Amy and Ray about are some of the best former players turned broadcasters during recent memory because there's been so many good ones. And in honor of Bill Walton, I want to talk about a few of them. So prayers go out to Bill Walton's family. Passed away yesterday at the age of 71, but thank you for all the memories from Bill Walton. I only remember him really as a broadcaster, not as a player. So those of you who got to see him play, you're lucky because I've heard he was pretty impressive in college basketball, Amy. So we'll get into that, too, when we get back. We'll continue to get to your phone calls. This is Middays. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back in the middays, everybody. I'm Bill Colarulo. Bob Cooney will be back with you tomorrow. He's enjoying his vacation, but he's listening to us and sending text messages.
Hi, Bob.
Bob, enjoy the rest of your vacation, man. We'll see you tomorrow. But we appreciate you listening. We appreciate all of you who are listening. And me and Amy Fadul are having some fun today with Ray Dunn. Right now, we're on the topic of if you could add a former Philadelphia Eagle to this current team, who would you add? And we've had some fun talking about it. I said Reggie White. Amy said Brian Dawkins. Ray went with Jeremiah Trotter, the Axeman, in the middle. Not Jeremiah Trotter Jr., but Senior. So we want to still hear from you, 610-632-0975. Send us a text or give us a call. There's a few on hold that I'll get to shortly. But we also wanted to honor Bill Walton today, who passed away yesterday at the age of 71. One of the greatest college basketball players ever. Then went to the NBA. Then became a broadcaster and was just as good at that. That's how I remember him. Such a great personality, Amy. So our hearts go out to the Walton family today.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people. I did not watch Bill Walton when he was playing in college or even with the Trailblazers in his NBA career, but the joy that I would have when he would do, and if I watch a lot of sports, obviously, and then I stay up late, so I got to see a lot of the Pac-12 after dark, and the joy that he would have of broadcasting those Pac-12 basketball games was just amazing. Championship conference, he would have all these little inside jokes with it, and it was just half the stuff he talked about was not even remotely basketball related, and it was just highly entertaining. I think I've seen a lot of comments and words of remembrance from his play-by-play guys like a Dave Pash, and they probably could tell more stories just about how he was probably off air as he was on, but he was the same guy on and off air. That's kind of what I took away from reading a lot of these tributes that these guys have written, and I thought that was a lot of fun because it's nice to see when you see people as they are, that's exactly how they are. And I feel like that Bill Walton was that guy. He did not put on a persona. He was that guy through and through, and he just oozed joy. He looked like he was enjoying every minute of his life, and he really lived it to the fullest. And certainly I know he had been battling some cancer. I think it was not as well known, but it was a shock to see someone as young as him. 71 is not that old, and a guy that a lot of people have grown to love and appreciate in his current role. That was very sad to see.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on when you're talking about it was his authenticity that came through, and that's what a lot of the best broadcasters, when they're being themselves and they're authentic, and that's why I wanted to ask Amy in honor of Bill Walton today, in looking at some of our favorite former player turned broadcasters in recent memory. Now, I'm going to remove one from the list because even though he technically was a former player, he did play a year for the Eagles, he was more of a coach, and that's John Madden, who was really the quintessential former football guy turned broadcaster that was just the best. I mean, there's a whole video game franchise after him. So let's remove John Madden because I think that would be a lot of people's favorites. But who's one of your favorite former player turned broadcasters?
We were talking about this a little bit, and I think there's a couple that come to mind. One comes to mind because he makes you forget the team that he played for, and I think that's pretty good considering what team he played for. But I love all of football, and I started watching this gentleman when he started doing college, and then now he does some professionals, and I'm going to go with the former Ohio State quarterback, Kirk Herbstreit.
Oh.
I'm a big fan of Herbie. I think he does a very nice job.
That's a good pull right there. Raymond, do you have one?
I do, and this is not someone that does game analysis, but someone that is in the studio. And, I mean, you could take your pick of any of the three on that panel, but I'm going
great.
Charles Barkley.
Yeah, Barkley's a great one.
The TNT panel is just amazing. They're broadcasters. They're not necessarily play-by-play guys, but they're certainly on television personalities.
Yeah, Barkley is a great one. Now, we did not get to do our could you add a former player to the current team with the Sixers. I was hoping to get there. We ran out of time. But I was going to say Barkley. I would add Barkley to the mix or Dr. J, but, how do you not add Dr. J? But if one of you took Dr. J, I was going to say Barkley. But for me, and I thought you were going to go there when you said
I thought about him.
It making people forget about who he played for is Troy Aikman.
Yeah.
Because Aikman, you couldn't stand him when he was with the Cowboys, and not because of anything he did. It was just because he was a Cowboy.
And they won all the time.
But, and he's just so good. He really is. I enjoy And I know this may be unpopular, but I like Joe Buck, too. I like them together. They're one of the best
Great combo.
combos.
Great combo.
And so outside of Troy Aikman, someone really recent that I like, and I'm surprised that Fox is doing what they're doing, is Greg Olson.
You know he just won the Sports Emmy?
It's crazy. And they're moving on from him to say, hey, we're going to give it to Tom Brady. And Brady may be great. I'm sure he'll work at it. But, man, Greg Olson's so damn good.
Are you sure he's going to work at it? I don't know.
Oh,
I think he's got a little too much hubris for me, but that's just me.
A little bit of an ego when you're the GOAT, I guess.
But and you hope that he is going to approach it the way that he initially approached his NFL career and, take a little bit of that humility but Greg Olson, I thought, did a tremendous job jumping right in there, quickly became the number one for Fox, which is saying something because they've had some success at that broadcaster spot with former players over the years. I thought Greg Olson did a tremendous job. So it'll be very interesting to see as they kind of moved on from Greg Olson. That was surprising. And then it was announced that we all knew it was coming, and then he wins the Emmy for analysts. And I was like, oh, poor guy. Well, at least you got a trophy.
Now, some people are checking in on YouTube, and they're saying Chris Collingsworth. I would not put him at my favorite. I wouldn't. I mean, I know he's had a lot of success going from the field to the broadcast booth, but, man, I wouldn't do that. Someone says, no love for Sarge?
Oh, now if you're talking about straight up personality, Gary Matthews it's got to be up there. And wow, and Crucker, give me John Kruk too. I mean, he's great. These are tremendous additions. I really miss. We had these great shirts, a couple of us at Sportsnet/NBC Sports Philadelphia. It says I listen to Sarge, and we would wear them out all the time. But I miss the days of Sarge being down there as the kind of field reporter. And just the interviews that he would have with players. I love Gary Matthews. He is my guy. That's a great pull. Whoever said that on YouTube, we should include Phillies. That should be their own thing. Just the former Phillies that have been now in the broadcast booth.
Yeah, we should have done it.
Because those are about personalities.
Instead of nationally, we should have limited it to Philly.
Yeah,
but
those are personalities.
What we did limit to Philly was, hey, former Eagles you'd add to the current team, and there's a lot of people on the line who want to get in. So I want to get to them before the show's over. Let's go to Andrew from Phoenixville. What's up, Andrew?
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're doing a great day. So this may be an unpopular opinion. I don't really care, but I also have a broadcaster I want to mention as well, if I may.
Yep.
In terms of the Eagles I bring back, I think I would choose Michael Vick because he was able to escape the pocket so quickly and so easily. No one was able to catch him. He is probably faster than Donovan McNabb, and he's probably faster than Jalen Hurts getting down the field. No one could really catch him. So that may be an unpopular opinion. I'll take Michael Vick. Now, in terms of my broadcaster, whoever played and then went to the broadcasting booth, my favorite broadcaster of all time, Major League Baseball, I'll give you a hint. Who would it be?
Tim McCarver.
Tim McCarver. That is correct.
Great one.
Yeah, that is a great call, Andrew. Tim McCarver is a great one. Great personality, too. The Michael Vick one. If you could get Michael Vick here before he left Atlanta, before he had his legal issues, I'm all in. We did get a couple of good years from him, but he was never the same guy he was when he was the Michael Vick Experience, which was a great commercial, too.
Yeah, it was a great commercial. It was like a ride, remember?
Loved that commercial.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Vick, he had a lot of flash. He's certainly very fast, an exceptionally athletic quarterback, could throw a mile. He had some, issues with turning the ball over at times down there in Atlanta. He had some issues as far as maturity. I mean, you don't have to go back that far to see him walking off and giving the fans a single salute wave. But yeah, no, I grew up in Virginia. Mike Vick grew up about 20 minutes from where I grew up, so I saw him a lot. And he is as dynamic as an athlete as I've ever seen in my entire life. He is just a tremendous, tremendous athlete. Heck of a quarterback, could play any sport. I don't know that I would take him, but I get the idea as far as speed and agility and,
I get
cannon of an arm. And no, there's not a lot of lefties out there anymore, so get the lefties back. You got
Tua Tagovailoa. But for me, if I'm looking at this current team, that's why I'm going Reggie White. That's why I'm going defense, because I think that Jalen Hurts is good enough for this team to be successful. So when I look at all the players, I'm not necessarily saying, well, who is the best player? I'm looking at the best fit for this roster on what they would need. So let's see what Angel from Mayfair has for us. What's up, Angel?
Hey, I would take I'm doing well. How is everybody doing?
Good, buddy.
I would take Brian Dawkins as a former Eagle, and for the quarterback position, I would want to see Randall Cunningham.
Yeah, Randall's a good one.
Yeah, good call, Angel. So he would take B-Doc. That was what Amy said as well. And look, it's not only his play on the field. It would be his leadership that – look, I don't know if you could have expected anybody to stop what happened last year because Jason Kelsey's a good leader. Fletcher Cox was a good leader. BG's a good leader. They couldn't stop it. But if there's any leader that maybe could have done it, it would have been B-Dog.
Well, yeah, and they had him on this very program, and he talked about it. And I think it was Ray that asked him, what would you have said or what would you say to this team, about last year? And he's like, you should be embarrassed. You should be embarrassed. And I think that he would have told them that at the time, and he would have, kind of had that atmosphere in the locker room. He's also a guy that I think when you look at some of these players, you don't want to disappoint some of them, and you don't want to let them down. I think that he evokes that spirit within a locker room, B-Doc.
Yeah, and when we were talking about Bill Walton and his authenticity, Brian Dawkins, man. I mean, I was lucky enough to be working down there with the Eagles when he was on the team, and I would see in the locker room behind closed doors. He took every single game to heart. He would sit at his locker sometimes after a loss and be so emotional that they lost that game. And you didn't get that from the other players. A lot of the players had the ability that they would come into the locker room and they would move on and say, we're fine. We're going to go get in our real expensive car and we'll be fine. Not B-Dog. He sat there and he took it to heart, man. He cared just as much as we did as fans, and I think that's why he will be beloved forever.
Yeah, I mean, he's that guy. And I'm not saying you have to be that guy. I certainly don't want an entire locker room full of guys that are maybe taking it that hard. But you maybe have a little bit more of that, maybe just a smidge more than what we've seen. I like that he's overly emotional. I like that he's overly invested in every single game. You see that, but that's how he is. He's that guy. Everything he does full force, full on. There's no half-assing it with Brian Dawkins, and I appreciate that. And if it was a guy next to me and I see the way he's playing and see the way he's caring, how do you not then have that rub off on you? You have to let that rub off on you. You would be immune to everything if you didn't feel just an ounce of what he gave out.
And maybe even more impressive than what Dawkins did on the field, it was his ability to curse someone out without ever using a curse word.
That's amazing.
Never used a curse word, and you would listen to him, and it'd be the most emotional, man, he just cursed somebody out. No, he didn't. He would say doggone.
Yeah, still says it.
Yeah, doggone is his go-to. But, man, I loved Brian Dawkins. That's a great answer. So we'll continue to get your answers after the break. We'll close out the show. We're bringing you all the way up to the 2 o'clock hour when we turn things over to Tyrone, Ricky Bo, and Silvana. And if you do listen to the best show ever, Ricky Bo and Tyrone had never tried a Frosty with French fries. Well, they tried it during the break. I'm sure they're going to get into that on the air. But we'll be right back. We'll close out the show. This is Middays with Bill Colarulo and Amy Fadul. Back in the middays, everybody. This is Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul. Our main man, Bob, will be back tomorrow. Had his nice little extended vacation, but he will be back tomorrow. Coming up at 2 o'clock is the best show ever with Tyrone, Ricky Bo, and Silvana. But me and Amy are having some fun today. We started the show talking about the Phillies. Any weaknesses that maybe got shown in the last few games, but we don't want to overreact. But I did overreact a little, saying, hey, keep Edmundo Sosa in the lineup when Turner comes back and put Turner in outfield. Amy shot me a look, so I'm no longer going to say that.
You can say that. I just will disagree, but I hear you. You want to keep Sosa in.
So, yeah, he's doing so well. We'll see if he comes back down to earth. But the good news is you don't have to rush Turner back.
Mm-hmm.
But then we started having some fun saying, hey, if you could add a former Philly to this lineup, who would it be? And we've got some great answers. But I do think now Ricky Bo has me rethinking because his answer was you bring back Ryan Howard and you put Bryce Harper in right. That may be the correct answer. Even though Amy said she would bring back Michael Jack Schmidt. Hard to argue with that one, too. Ray
you
Dunn
bring
says
back Schmidt, move Bowman to first, Harper back out to right, then you get rid of the right field problem there.
Yeah, I think
There
the
you
right field
go.
prop. Yeah, a lot of people
I'm just
trying
finding
to
a way
address. Got to address the right field.
Finding a way to address right field. I
That's
love how
actually
we
a
just
great-
keep saying addressing right field and not mentioning the player by name.
he who will not be named. And most people say his name wrong anyway. I actually had my grandmother say to me the other day, you got to tell everybody they're saying his name wrong. It's Castellanos. I'm like,
Oh my God.
it's not, Grandma. It's not
God bless.
Castellanos. But anyway, then we switched the conversation to the Eagles, and Eagles we would bring back. I said Reggie White. Amy said Brian Dawkins. Ray went with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I want to go to the phones now because
I
my
would
man.
go with senior. I'm bringing him back.
Oh, I mean
Yes.
senior. Excuse
Yeah,
me.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I think I would be pretty successful if you want me to put Jeremiah Trotter Jr. on this team.
Check.
Congratulations. I did
Good
it.
job.
Ray wins. But now we're going to go to my man Terrell, who always checks in. What's up, Terrell?
Hey, what's up? Always a great show. I love you guys.
Appreciate that, man.
Yo, Ray had a good show on the weekend. Also, I want to shout him out too.
Ray's
Shout out, Ray.
right. That's
Sunday.
right.
Ray is the man. He does it all.
So I got a question after I give my answer. A fantasy question, obviously, for the debate purposes. But I'm gonna give Andy Reid. But also, let's play a game of pretend. Let's pretend Andy Reid won this Super Bowl and wants to retire an Eagle. Would you bring him back if the Chiefs wanted Howie Roseman under table deal? Like, who was more important for you?
Oh, man. Good question, Terrell. So he says, would you trade? Did he give me his Eagle or did I?
No, you.
Oh, man. I'm sorry, Terrell. Send us a text. So we're running out of time. That's why we got another caller on the line. But I love Andy Reid. Obviously, he's one of the greatest to ever do it. But for me, if he only wants to come back for a year, I'm not sure I'm giving up Howie Roseman for him.
Yeah, was that a trade? Was I
Yeah,
making
he's
a
saying
trade?
you'd have to give up Howie Roseman, send him to the Chiefs.
So Andy Reid would be his Eagle to choose.
He's actually trading Andy Reid for Howie Roseman. This is an all-time hypothetical that I actually love.
It is an all-time hypothetical.
I love
Trading
that.
a coach for a general manager.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, all things being equal, I think you take Andy Reid over Howie Roseman because Andy Reid also has the ability to be a general manager.
Yes, and he also has the ability to affect the game on a weekly basis.
Yeah, so I think in all things equal. But under this scenario where you're just bringing him back for a year before he retires, no, I don't do it.
Well, that's the big question here because now you're looking at age. Andy Reid only a few more years in the league. Howie Roseman longer. I mean, are we throwing a pick in here?
What are we getting?
What's the compensation here?
Man,
Come on,
Terrell,
Terrell.
you can't drop this
Yeah.
question on us with only 3 minutes left in the show.
That's
We
such
could do a
great-
whole 4-hour show
Yeah,
on that.
that's
I never once in my mind thought, what if they could trade
What
Howie
if?
Roseman for Andy? Who negotiates that trade?
Yeah,
Is that a
does-
Jeffrey Lurie thing?
Does Kansas City want Howie Roseman?
Imagine you're the general manager getting called into the general manager's office to be told you've been traded.
Yes.
Do they throw in a conditional draft pick that you can't ask Howie Roseman about or he may get angry?
Yes. Is it just not about that?
So the other question we had today was some of your favorite former players turned broadcasters in light of Bill Walton's passing. And Roger from the Cell has a good one on the line. What's up, Roger? Roger.
Hey, Roger. Oh, he's trying to answer. I don't know that he's there.
I think we had Roger on hold
Yeah.
too much. Sorry, Roger. So, fun show, though, today, Amy. Unfortunately, though, as you probably know, we can't bring back former Phillies. We can't bring back former Eagles. So we're stuck kind of with the rosters that we currently have, although things could change. And I'm sure when you look at this Phillies team, we have until July 30th. I don't think that this lineup is necessarily the way it's going to look come July.
I mean, I think that there's a concern for some of the power in the outfield not being there as a whole. I wouldn't mind having another right-handed bat somewhere in there. I don't think that there's anybody that would look at this roster and think, as it's currently constructed, is exactly what you're going to see come September 1st. I don't think that Dave Dombrowski feels that way. I think they're always looking to improve everything, and whether it's the starting rotation, back into the bullpen, a bat off the bench, an extra defensive arm out there as far as to play maybe some infield positions. I think that there's going to be several moves. I don't think there's anything blockbuster-ish, but I think there will be some moves.
Yeah, and they asked the question on the morning show this morning that, do you go all in? Do you put all your chips in this year in light of the fact that now Atlanta loses Acuna Jr., they lost Spencer Strider earlier in the season. The L.A. Dodgers obviously are a good team, but they look like they are beatable. You don't have Shohei Ohtani on the mound this year, which he will be next year most likely. So, yeah, I expect Dombrowski to do something, and I will guarantee that the Phillies, we were just talking about the Phillies, the Eagles roster doesn't look the same. I still expect Howie Roseman to do something. We see it every year with him that come August, some move is made. Again, probably not a blockbuster move, but I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in a veteran defensive tackle. So we got to close it up because we have the best show ever coming up at 2 o'clock. We appreciate everybody who joined us today, me and Amy Fadul. But you're lucky because Bob Cooney will be back tomorrow. Everybody, have a great day.